Chapter 14:10. That night Qin Zhao didn't sleep. Instead he sat on the balcony. During the first half of the night, there were no clouds in the sky and the stars shone brightly. But in the latter half of the night, the starry sky was once again covered by dark clouds. The wind was blowing. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Qin. Suddenly he heard Fei Lai's scream in the bedroom. He immediately stood up and returned to the bedroom. "I am here." Fei Lai touched her lower body. It was wet. "My stomach hurts," Fei Lai said. Qin Zhao immediately turned on the lights and saw that Fei Lai's face was pale. Qin Zhao couldn't help but feel nervous. Was she going to give birth? What should he do? What should he do now? He couldn't be nervous now, at least not in front of Fei Lai. First he had to confirm if Fei Lai's membranes were broken. The bed was already wet. Yes, the membranes were broken and the amniotic fluid was coming out. "Fei Lai, I'll call 4 over immediately." Qin Zhao immediately ran to 4's room and called, "For wake up. Fei Lai's in labor." Bang bang bang. Qin Zhao's voice was not soft at all. 4 wasn't the only one who heard it. Everyone in the villa, including the pets, heard it as well. 4 ran out of the room in her pajamas and followed Qin Zhao into the bedroom. 4 immediately went up to check on Fei Lai. "The membrane isn't completely ruptured," 4 said. "I know." Qin Zhao nodded. "Send Fei Lai down first." Qin Zhao tried his best to carry Fei Lai. Just then a small figure crept into the room. "Daddy, is Mommy going to give little Jerlin a little sister?" "Alright, I don't have to worry about little Jerlin asking me where I came from anymore." Qin Zhao chuckled. "Yeah, little Jerlin has to be good today." "Little Jerlin has always been obedient," little Jerlin pouted and said unhappily. Through the elevator, Qin Zhao carried Fei Lai to the surgery room. At this time, Xiaola also got up and rushed to the operating room. Jerlin also came down. Qin Zhao looked at her and scratched his head. Should he kick little Jerlin out? Little Jerlin wasn't even 10 months old yet. Wouldn't it be bad to let her see such a bloody scene? Would it cast a shadow on her future? But just then Qin Zhao suddenly felt an evil spirit appear in his villa. It was still early in the morning. How could an evil spirit appear at this time? Moreover, it was within the boundaries of his villa. But soon the evil spirit was destroyed. It was Blackie. "For Shara, I'll leave this to you too," Qin Zhao said with a serious expression. 4 stared at Qin Zhao with widened eyes. Qin Zhao gave 4 a look. "Alright, go." 4 then looked at Jerlin. "What about Jerlin?" "Let her stay here," Qin Zhao said. "Abitos, come down." Abitos moved his huge body and climbed down the stairs. Although Shara had stayed here for a night, it was her first time seeing Abitos. Startled, he looked at Abitos in shock. "Abitos, stay here," Qin Zhao ordered. "Eat anything that comes in." Isada. Abitos crawled to a corner on his own and curled up, ignoring Shara's surprised look. 4, on the other hand, was much calmer. She had been here too many times and had seen Abitos before. She had even witnessed Abitos' growth with her own eyes. She had seen Abitos grow from a small lizard into a giant. "Also, I have to seal the entrance to prevent the lake water from pouring in and flooding this place." "Okay." 4 nodded. Then Qin Zhao turned and walked out of the basement. "For what's that? It doesn't eat humans, right?" "Don't worry," 4 said calmly. "I watched Abitos grow up. He's very obedient. It's just a mutated Komodo dragon. In fact, Abitos ate humans." Last March, when 4, Fei Lai and Qin Zhao had gone to Sacramento, they had encountered bandits on the way. Abitos had bitten off a bandit's leg and swallowed it. Of course, 4 wouldn't tell Cher about this in case she panicked. Qin Zhao sealed the basement entrance. By then, Knots and Dalmore had woken up too. After washing up, they saw Qin Zhao sitting in the living room. But they didn't see Blackie sitting across from him. Qin Zhao looked back at the two and said, "There's breakfast in the kitchen." There was a whooshing sound outside the window. It was the sound of the forest being blown by the strong wind. Rain slapped against the glass window, making pitter-patter sounds. The wind outside was already very strong. The wind here had been blocked by the surrounding trees, so it was at least halved. If there weren't any trees around, it would be hurricane-level wind. Qin Zhao's pets had all hidden in the forest. They didn't have to worry about being blown away in the forest. Qin Zhao was sitting in the living room, but his small world senses covered the basement, observing Fei Lai's situation. Fei Lai's membranes hadn't completely ruptured. The cervix was still expanding naturally. This was a normal physiological reaction of natural labor. "See, Mr. Chen." Dahlia called out twice and Qin Zhao stood up suddenly. You called me?" Qin Zhao was already overly nervous. "Is Miss Fei Lai in labor?" Yes." Qin Zhao nodded. "Later, no matter what happens, don't go outside. As long as the mansion is still here, don't run around. If the mansion is destroyed, take the elevator to the second floor to hide. It's still early, right?" "Oh, it's late." Qin Zhao shook his head. Suddenly, Dalmor felt that Qin Zhao's aura had changed. It had turned into a red, dangerous aura. Navats also felt Qin Zhao's dangerous aura. Not just Qin Zhao, but they also felt a dark red, dangerous aura in front of him. "Mr. Qin, is there something in front of you?" "Don't worry," Qin Zhao said calmly. "It's harmless and will protect you." Qin Zhao and Blackie's strategy was that Qin Zhao would be in charge of the outside and Blackie would be in charge of the inside. Qin Zhao was responsible for stopping the main force of the evil spirits, but he wasn't confident that he could completely stop the fish that slipped through the net. Now was the time for Blackie to act. Don't say that Blackie was wasting his talents. This was the best arrangement. What Qin Zhao wanted was absolute certainty. He would arrange whatever was the safest. Suddenly, Navat's shingles felt a strong palpitation. Then Navat's legs turned to jelly. She saw a huge black shadow rushing towards them in the air outside the window. Ghost ship. It was a ghost ship. Please remember the original domain name of this book. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1411. Nawat's Hingis and Dailymore nearly pulled their hair out. So unlucky? A specter ship was actually blown here? Moreover, it was heading straight for the villa. Was there anything more unlucky than this? Qin Zhao looked at the ghost ship and walked out of the door. The moment he opened the door, the wind howled into the living room. Knots and Delamore couldn't stand steadily. "Mr. Qin, where are you going?" Navat Singh exclaimed. Didn't this guy see the specter ship rushing towards him? Knots rushed to the window and looked at Qin Zhao's figure outside. The bow of the ghost ship was facing them. They couldn't see the length of the ship, but the height of the pole was at least 60 meters. This was an incredible ship, and on the wooden frame of the ship was a statue of the goddess Athena. The ship was in ruins, but the flag on it was very clear. It was a pirate flag with a black background. A naked woman knelt on the ground and a long sword pierced through the woman's chest. "Virgo!" Navat Singh exclaimed. Although the rain hit the glass window, making it hard to see clearly, Navat still recognized the origin of the specter ship. One of the top 10 ghost ships, Virgo. Not every specter ship could be recognized. Many specter ships were unknown before they fell silent. But any ghost ship with a name would definitely be famous on the sea, both in the past and present. As for the 10 great specter ships, they had a terrifying reputation. Qin Zhao raised his right arm. This was just the beginning. He didn't want to waste too much time. White light. The ghost ship was instantly enveloped by the white light. Then not even scraps were left. Everything turned to dust. Knott's face was filled with disbelief. What had just happened? What was that white light? She couldn't understand what had happened in that instant. Qin Zhao's small world sensed to see if there were any survivors. There weren't any. Only then did Qin Zhao return to the living room. Now Navats looked at Qin Zhao in a different way. Virgo. Destroyed? The famous Virgo was destroyed just like that? That was the specter ship. It was the famous Virgo. Furthermore, there was no thrilling battle. In an instant everything was over. "Mr. Thief, that was ghost ship, right? How did you do it?" Qin Zhao glanced at Navats. "I think you got something wrong. We're not facing the second night but the third. The awakened one is my unborn daughter. So while it's still early and the wind hasn't reached its peak, you still have a chance to escape." Not Singh and Delamore were both shocked. The third night? Were they about to face the third night? Dahlia was still alright because she didn't have an accurate idea of how terrifying the third night was. But Navats Hingis knew. She knew how terrible it was. That would be a disaster. "Mr. Qin, are you kidding me? Now that my family is in the basement, do you think I would joke around?" Navats was trembling slightly. "Mr. Qin, do you not understand the meaning of the third night?" "I know," Qin Zhao said calmly. "But now my family is facing the third night." Navats Hingis looked at Dahlia. "Dahlia, you go first." "Stay." Mr. Chen, I'll stay here for now, but if I think it's necessary, I'll leave too. I'll stay too, Dahlia said. Thank you. Qin Zhao nodded. I'll still say the same thing. If you stay in the mansion you won't be harmed. Navots didn't have much confidence in Qin Zhao's promise. After all, this was the third night. Plus, it didn't seem like a normal third night. Qin Zhao sat back down on the sofa and continued observing the basement. Fei Lai's labor seemed to be slower than a normal natural labor. Thankfully, Fei Lai was healthy and strong, so as long as there were no major problems, it was acceptable even if it took longer. Qin Zhao didn't care if it was natural, cesarean, or painless labor. As long as Fei Lai was safe, as long as the child was safe, nothing else mattered. After getting rid of the specter ship, the attack seemed to stop. In the next hour or so there was still no movement. Nevertheless, Qin Zhao remained tense. At 9:40 in the morning, the TV broadcasted an emergency announcement again. The wind at the center of the storm reached 368 kilometers per hour. This was a terrifying number. It might even be the most powerful tropical storm in 100 years. 20-meter-tall waves rose along the coastline. The coastline was completely locked down. At the same time, the weather station also suggested that residents living in the suburbs should hide in their basements and prepare for waterproofing. Every TV station was broadcasting the news of the tropical storm. Some anchors even claimed that this would be the toughest test in American history. Just then Qin Zhao stood up again. Navots Hingis and Dahlia both looked at him uneasily. It wasn't just because of the third night, but also because of this unprecedented storm. Of course, so far they had not linked the two events together. But Qin Zhao felt that they were the same event. Mr. Qin, are there more enemies? Yes. Qin Zhao nodded. Navots Hingis was a bit surprised. Qin Zhao's senses were stronger than she'd imagined. Of course, Qin Zhao's maximum range was 30 meters, which was the range of his mini-world. On the other hand, if Navots used perception offense, it might not be as clear as Qin Zhao within 30 meters, but it would be more accurate beyond 30 meters. Navots used his super area of effect perception. In an instant, an image flashed in his mind. Hundreds of evil spirits appeared within a few hundred meters in front of him. How was this possible? It wasn't even 10 in the morning. How could there be a large-scale attack of evil spirits? She'd thought that the ghost ship had been blown over by the wind. They were just unlucky. But now these hundreds of evil spirits couldn't have been blown over by the wind too, right? This was too unusual. It didn't fit the pattern of the Night of Awakening. Also, why were there so many evil spirits at this time? Could Qin Zhao deal with them alone? Should she go out and help? Dahlia, stay here. I'll go out for a bit. Navots finally decided to go out and see if she could help. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 14:12. However, Navots regretted it as soon as she stepped out. She'd underestimated the wind outside. When she reached the front yard, she almost lost her balance. Fortunately, there was a pillar supporting the awning and Navots grabbed onto it. Of course, the canopy had already been blown away. Only the pillar was left standing there. But even with the support of the pillar, Navots still felt it was difficult. She couldn't even help Qin Zhao fight. However, Qin Zhao seemed to not feel the wind at all. He just stood there. The hundreds and thousands of evil spirits flew over from above Mirror Lake. It was truly terrifying. They were so dense that they were like an army charging over. They gave off a chaotic, disorderly, and manic aura. This aura gathered above their heads and accompanied them as they advanced. At the same time, it made them stronger and scarier. In Navots' eyes, these hundreds of evil spirits were the scariest part of the third night. But reality wasn't like that. It was daytime now and this was only the prelude. Judging from the trend of getting weaker and stronger, Navots didn't know what kind of attack she would face later on. The beginning was already so scary. What kind of attack would there be later? Could the few of them really defend against such an attack? Why did you come out? Qin Zhao turned his head and looked at Navots. I came out to help you. Go in. I don't need your help here. Be careful. Navots Singh suddenly shouted. The evil spirit waved its arms and grabbed at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao raised his arm and grabbed the evil spirit. The evil spirit struggled in his hand, but it couldn't break free. Eye of the lightning attract lightning. Boom, boom, boom. Bolts of lightning descended from the sky and landed on Qin Zhao's right arm. Navots Singles was shocked to the core. Looking at Qin Zhao's unmoving body, she wondered if the lightning was attracted by Qin Zhao. He said he knew some elemental magic. Was it thunder magic? And this was called only a little? The evil spirit in Qin Zhao's right hand had already turned to ashes under the lightning. Qin Zhao's right arm also gathered a large amount of lightning. The mouth of gluttony spat out an electric arc. The terrifying electric arc broke through the wind and rain and swept across the sky above Mirror Lake, remaining in the air for more than 10 seconds. In less than 10 seconds, hundreds of evil spirits had been wiped out. In the storm, Qin Zhao was invincible. The harsher the weather, the more lightning Qin Zhao could absorb. Of course, he could convert more of it into magic power. Navat's face was filled with shock. Was this what Qin Zhao had said in the past? Knowing some elemental magic? This was a powerful magic that she had never heard of or seen before. He said he majored in strengthening. It was obviously a lie. Looks like it'll stop for a while. Qin Zhao glanced at the storm and turned to bring Navat Singh into the house. Mr. Qin, it seems like there's no point for me to stay here. Put on this headset, Qin Zhao said. If you notice any stragglers while I'm busy fighting, inform me immediately. Qin Zhao had never planned on letting Navats and Delimore help him fight. They only stayed here to ensure that nothing would go wrong. In less than 10 minutes, Navats said, there's another wave of evil spirits attacking. Some of them are very, very scary. Navats looked at Qin Zhao worriedly. Could Qin Zhao really deal with such frequent attacks by himself? Qin Zhao walked out again. A few minutes later he returned to the house. Mr. Qin, it's done? No, those evil spirits are still here, Navats asked in confusion, looking up at Qin Zhao who just entered the room. I'll use my clone to deal with them, Qin Zhao said. Navats realized that the evil spirits were indeed disappearing quickly. Clone magic? Qin Zhao had said last time that he indeed knew clone magic. But Navats hadn't thought much of it at the time. After all, most clone magic was passed down through bloodlines. At least, Navats hadn't seen any powerful clone spiritualists. However, Qin Zhao's clone was actually able to fight against so many evil spirits, including some powerful ones. Those powerful evil spirits couldn't be compared to regular evil spirits or spiritual bodies. Before they arrived, they'd been devouring each other. Some would become even more violent and chaotic. Their strength was 10 to dozens of times stronger than ordinary evil spirits. Navats could only sense the existence of the evil spirits and the strength of their auras. But when she stood before the floor-to-ceiling window and looked outside, she could see Qin Zhao's 12 clones. Every one of them was extremely powerful. Even the evil spirit, which Navats thought was extremely powerful, could only take one strike from Qin Zhao's clone. Navats was amazed. Not only was Qin Zhao's elemental magic powerful, but his clone magic was also powerful. She saw with her own eyes that one of Qin Zhao's clones ripped apart a 10-meter-long evil spirit with its bare hands. If it were him, the biggest possibility was that he would flee in defeat. Navats thought back to 2 days ago. She'd even used the tone of a senior to teach Qin Zhao how to use magic and fight. At the thought, Navats' shingles felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. It was like a kindergarten teacher telling a Chinese Academy of Sciences doctor how to study. And the battle lasted much longer than what Navats expected. Before the first wave was destroyed, the second wave came. Qin Zhao had 12 clones, but they didn't know magic. Now to Qin Zhao, the 12 clones' greatest use was no longer to fight separately. Instead they combined into one. Or it could be a battle that didn't have much strength and lasted a long time. He'd let the 12 clones fight. Navats had thought that Qin Zhao's clones wouldn't be able to last long. But reality wasn't like that. Qin Zhao's clones were extremely strong and could last for a long time. In fact, as long as Qin Zhao's clones weren't destroyed or taken back, they would always exist. An evil spirit escaped, Navats said. It's coming from the right side of the villa. Suddenly, the red ball of dangerous aura in the living room disappeared. In just 3 seconds, the evil spirit disappeared too. Navats was shocked. It wasn't a dangerous aura. It was a despairing aura. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1413. Navats felt chills run down her spine. It was a very bad feeling. The dangerous aura that had been lingering in the living room returned, but when it returned, it had turned black. Black was a color she had never seen before. Even her elders had never told her what black represented. This kind of perception spell only had two colors, red and green. They represented the level of danger. But what did black represent? He had never heard of it or even seen it before. Was this another spell from Qin Zhao? But what spell was it exactly? Qin Zhao didn't pay attention to Navot's and Delamore's expressions. He was more concerned about Fei Lai's situation in the basement. Fei Lai had already been in labor for almost 5 hours. And it was still going on. Qin Zhao completely ignored the battle outside the house. If there was a battle above, the basement was also a battlefield. Mom, go. Go. Zherlin cheered Fei Lai on. This was probably the first time Qin Zhao couldn't participate in a battle himself. Fei Lai had to face it alone. Qin Zhao kept looking at the time. Time passed by minute. When the hand of the clock pointed at 12. Wah wah, with a cry, Qin Zhao's second child was finally born. Just then the storm seemed to grow stronger. Qin Zhao could hear creaking sounds coming from the mansion. This was the prelude to the structure of the mansion disintegrating. Mr. Qin, the house seems to be destroyed. Delamore's expression suddenly turned ugly. If she and Navot Singh were exposed to the storm, they would die for sure. The number of evil spirits has increased. Navot's turned to look at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao finally turned his attention back to the battlefield. Navot's and Delamore realized that a black and red liquid had appeared under their feet. What is this? Immediately the storm started destroying the mansion. This was an irreversible process. Even Qin Zhao couldn't avoid it. If it was just a storm, Qin Zhao could still protect the mansion with the dark lava. But it wasn't just a storm now. Qin Zhao summoned Bostier and the two Dark Mothers. Not Singh and Delamore were startled once more. They thought it was some evil magical creature. The two of them gasped in amazement when they saw Bustil's enormous body. The moment Bustil appeared, his huge body tore down the villa. His body was much bigger than the villa. The living room was small and it couldn't accommodate Bustil's huge body at all. But Bustil stood in front of Navot's and Delamore, shielding them from the storm. "These three are my servants," Qin Zhao said. "They will protect you." The two women sucked in a breath of cold air again. Such a powerful creature was actually his servant. Did he summon it? Nawat's shingles realized that Qin Zhao had another powerful series of spells. Even if Bustil didn't do anything and just stood there, wouldn't it be scary enough? This huge body almost completely blocked the storm. The two darkness matriarchs followed them calmly. This man was unbelievably powerful. Qin Zhao stood at the front and looked at the battlefield. The 12 clones immediately retreated to Qin Zhao's side. Dark lava enveloped them. All in one. The 12 clones and Qin Zhao merged into one. Qin Zhao hadn't used all-in-one for a month. But now he was full of fighting spirit. This battle wasn't for benefits or for others. Everything about him was beneath it. Narvak Singh and Delamore were confused. Why did Qin Zhao remove the clone spell? Weren't the 12 clones very effective at blocking most of the evil spirits? Was it because it was too draining? That made sense. The clones had been fighting intensely for a few hours already. Must have used a lot of magic power. However, such a large amount of magic power was consumed. Qin Zhao summoned the 3 magical creatures to protect the 2 women. Would he still have the strength to continue fighting? Nawat Singh and Delamore were both worried. Nawat's already realized that this wasn't an ordinary third night. She'd never heard of a third night starting on the third morning. Qin Zhao wasn't surprised. Including this time, Qin Zhao had experienced the third night 3 times. All 3 times were different. The first time, Blackie had finished it all by himself. The second time was different. That night the Evil Spirit Society had attacked Norma. Plus, the Evil Spirit Society had attached themselves to the bodies of many gang members. It was much stronger than the first time. Today's intensity was also much stronger than the previous 2 times. Perhaps everyone's third night would be different. Nawat's shingles saw the sky full of evil spirits coming for them. It's over. The number of evil spirits was like a tidal wave following the momentum of a storm. Could Qin Zhao stop so many evil spirits? Suddenly there was a splash in Mirror Lake. A huge mouth opened and sucked in hundreds of evil spirits. Not Singh and Delamore's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. What was that? What had just come out of the water? Qin Zhao waved his arms and summoned 1,000 swords. The next moment, 1,000 stone swords appeared around Qin Zhao. This scene shocked Nawat Singh and Delamore once again. They'd never seen such a shocking scene before. 1,000 stone swords broke through the air with cyclones. Was this the battle of the third night? The scene was like a myth. Navats was speechless. How many evil spirits and dead souls had been blown over by this storm? In Navats and Delamore's eyes, each of Qin Zhao's spells was so shocking. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared above everyone's heads. Navats suddenly felt a threat from above. Ghost ship. It was a ghost ship that was falling headfirst. Mr. Qin, above. But it was too late. The ghost ship had come too suddenly and fallen too fast. Qin Zhao couldn't dodge at all. Navats and Delamore both cried out in shock. They saw the evil spirit crew on the ghost ship baring their fangs and claws. They were as crazy and unrestrained as they were when they were alive. They waved their rotten swords and let out evil and crazy howls. Qin Zhao lifted his head. He hadn't planned on running. There was no point in running away in this war. Please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 14:14. There was only one solution. Kill all the attackers. Qin Zhao raised his fist and smashed it against the bow of the ghost ship that was falling down. Nawat's shingles and Delamore's eyes widened. What did they just see? They saw a human, a body of flesh and blood, shattering a ghost ship with a single punch. The hundreds of evil souls on the Spectre ship were also blown to smithereens. They'd been crazy pirates when they were alive. Now that they were dead, they were even crazier and scarier. But Qin Zhao only punched them. Qin Zhao retracted his fist as if it was just a small thing. They never knew that ghost ships were so easy to deal with. In the past, if they discovered a rampaging ghost ship, they would usually need to gather and fight. No matter what the result was, they would need to pay a huge price. But to Qin Zhao, ghost ships seemed to be just a matter of one punch. Just then a wave surged over from the end of Mirror Lake. A red wave. As the storm swept over, the red wave surged more and more violently. Tide of death. Knots shouted. Mr. Qin, that's the tide of death. Be careful. Qin Zhao looked at the red wave. There were countless howling souls in the wave. They were fighting to be the first to rush toward the mansion. They'd already formed a wave more than 10 meters tall. There wasn't just one wave either. There were 2 more tides of death behind it. Amon attacked again. He leaped from the side and flapped his huge wings, increasing his height. He flapped again and went higher. When he was 100 meters in the air, Amon suddenly fell headfirst. With an unparalleled impact, he plummeted to the ground. Not Singh and Delamore had never seen such a shocking battle before. This battlefield had long since surpassed their understanding. Boom. The moment Amon landed, the force was also dispersed. Amon already weighed 1,000 tons. Falling from a height of 100 meters, one could imagine how powerful the impact would be. Even the 3 tides of death were wiped out by the impact caused by Amon. This battle also toppled their worldview. It turned out that spiritualists could really be like those in myths and legends. An absurd thought even appeared in Naught's mind. Who was stronger between this man and the 5 pillar kings in the Romani mythology? Nawats recalled the mirror image of weakness she had used on Qin Zhao last time. At the time she was already shocked. She thought that was Qin Zhao's strongest power. At the time she'd naively thought that she'd made a mistake and used her mirror image ability to copy Qin Zhao's strongest power. But now it seemed that he was too naive. Sing, I sense a huge presence approaching from the front. Did I sense it wrongly? Dalamore's words interrupted Nawat Singh's thoughts. Nawat quickly activated his range perception. Indeed, there was a terrifying presence approaching from the front. Mr. Qin, be careful. There's a huge evil aura ahead. In fact, Qin Zhao had already sensed it. Not only did he sense it, but he also saw it. It was a fleet of modern warships. That's right, it was a modern warship fleet. The fleet consisted of more than 10 warships of various models and functions. And they were flying in the air. What a ridiculous thing. A fleet was flying in the sky. This wasn't science fiction. It was a super magical plot. They were all death fleets formed by warships that had sunk in the Pacific Ocean. They didn't wander or gather. Fortunately, they didn't wander. Otherwise, the entire Pacific Ocean would become a forbidden zone. But this time they'd gathered because of the power of the third night. In the wind and rain, the enormous figure of the flagship could be vaguely seen. They came with death. They were a true disaster. Boom. In the wind and rain, a ball of green fire flashed. Boom. A ball of intense green death flames exploded in front of Qin Zhao. Navat Singh exclaimed. She and Dalymore had thought that Qin Zhao would be strong enough to face all this. But who would have thought that the arrival of the Death Fleet would turn the situation around? The explosion was a combination of death flames and modern weapons. Flesh and blood couldn't resist it at all. Any creature that was hit head-on by this weapon would only end up as ashes and smoke. Navat Singh and Dalymore both thought that Qin Zhao couldn't possibly escape. However, the green flames dissipated faster than expected. Qin Zhao stood where he was unharmed. But the Death Fleet's attack didn't stop there. More than a dozen ghost warships fired hundreds of cannons at the same time. These ghost warships spanned from the 20s to the 60s and 70s. The dark magma immediately formed a black screen, blocking the Death Fleet's first salvo. They couldn't let the ghost warships continue attacking. Even if Qin Zhao could handle it, Navat Singh and Dalymore couldn't. Qin Zhao finally moved. This was the first time he'd moved his feet. Behind him, Navat Singh and Dalymore saw Qin Zhao shoot out like an arrow. Reverse storm shot toward the Death Fleet. Because of the storm, the visibility was too low. They couldn't see the battle between Qin Zhao and the Death Fleet clearly. But soon the flagship at the front suddenly fell. Then Amon swam over. He opened his mouth and absorbed the falling ghost warships. It didn't take long for the Spectre battleship to disappear. They weren't real. They were essentially the same as the ancient ghost ships. Soon the second ghost warship fell, then the third and the fourth. In Qin Zhao's eyes, the Death Fleet's biggest threat was their long-range attacks. Once Qin Zhao got close, the threat was no different from a regular ghost ship. In a short 10 minutes, more than a dozen ghost warships all fell. Amon had already devoured the death aura of the entire Death Fleet. Right now, Amon had turned into a 100-meter-tall beast. He spread his wings and soared in the air. Qin Zhao heaved a sigh of relief. Thankfully, there weren't any new warships or short-range missiles. Otherwise, Qin Zhao would be in big trouble. This was a great fortune and misfortune. There were too many unclean and filthy things that had been blown over by this storm. Amon also started showing signs of mutation after devouring large amounts of death aura. More accurately, he was showing his true form. Amon was extremely close to his original form. Navat Singh and Dalymore were stunned by Amon's majestic appearance. There was actually such a magical creature in the world. Chapter 14-15. Amon opened his mouth and a green beam of light shot out. The green beam was similar to the Death Fleet's cannons. But Amon shot further, and his breath was heavier. The green beam shot more than 10 kilometers away and then exploded into a ball of green flames. He seemed to have hit something. Navat and Dalymore could only vaguely see the faint green light, but they didn't know what it was. But soon they saw what it was. It was a baby, at least from the overall appearance. It was indeed a baby. But the baby was a bit too big. A 40-meter-long baby was obviously not born to a human. Its skin wasn't tender and fragile like a newborn's. Instead, it was dark and cracked. Qin Zhao descended from the sky and pressed down on the giant baby's head. In an instant, the giant baby's body collapsed and countless evil spirits escaped from the giant baby's body. The giant baby was formed by countless evil spirits. Lightning. Qin Zhao drew down a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of evil spirits were turned into ashes by the lightning. Qin Zhao suddenly had an idea. If he could summon the devil army from the association, then he could use Thunderstorm at Mirror Lake. That way he wouldn't have to keep running around to fix his mistakes. Qin Zhao took out his phone, but there was no signal. There was no signal. Qin Zhao was so angry that he almost smashed his phone. After this was over, he had to change to another operator. Damn it. He had no choice. For his family, he had to continue fighting. Although this battle had already exceeded the normal third night, it was still not enough. But the strongest ones were only at the Death Fleet's level. They couldn't create something that went against nature. But to Dalymore and Navat Singh, this battle was thrilling. It wasn't something they could interfere with at all. Qin Zhao worked harder and harder. Every evil spirit was torn apart by him. I haven't even hugged my baby since it was born. My whole family is still in the basement. My house was torn down. Although I did it on my own initiative. You asterisks holes, you're still here to cause trouble. The more depressed Qin Zhao was, the harder he attacked. Qin Zhao wasn't happy. Everyone in the basement wasn't happy either. Feilai, is Qin okay? For hugged the baby. When the baby was born, it cried for a while. Then Phalai fed it some milk and it fell asleep. Phalai was wrapped in a blanket. She sat next to Abitos with Phal and Shala. Abitos wasn't really a cold-blooded animal. His body was very warm, just enough to provide heat for the three of them. After Shayla overcame her initial fear, she was no longer afraid. Little Jerlin, on the other hand, kept poking her head over to look at the wrapped baby. "Mommy, the baby is so small." "Mommy, can I hold the baby?" Phalai smiled bitterly. Little Jerlin couldn't be carried now. Boom boom. A violent tremor came from the ceiling. However, the ceiling was still quite sturdy. There were only tremors but no signs of collapse and no water seepage. "There won't be a world war outside, right?" Shayla asked. "It's okay. Chen's up there." "How long do we have to hide here?" "I don't know. Chen will inform us once the problem is solved." "Are you sure nothing will happen to Chen?" Phal wasn't very sure. "Of course not. Daddy's super powerful. He'll kill all the bad guys." "Oh, Phalai, you haven't named the baby yet," Phal said. "How about we give this pretty girl a name now?" "Let's wait for Chen," Phalai said. "Don't wait for him. You gave birth to the baby, so you have the right to name it." "I still want to discuss with Chen before deciding." "Mommy, isn't the baby a name?" Jerlin asked, tilting her head. Phalai, Phal and Shayla were all speechless. I suddenly realized a very, very serious problem. Phal suddenly became serious. "What problem?" "Chin has considered all the problems except one." Four's expression darkened. "Tell me. What problem?" "Toilet. How to solve it." "You need to go to the toilet?" Phal nodded gravely. "Big or small?" "Big," Phal said, covering her eyes. Phalai and Shayla's expressions also became unnatural. If he did it in an enclosed space, it would turn the enclosed space into hell. Phalai thought for a long time. "Help me up. What are you going to do? Do you want to pee too?" Phalai rolled her eyes. She had only eaten a little in the past 2 days. Most of the rest was nutrient fluid. Phalai went to the entrance of the second basement and turned on the switch. Then she looked down. There was no light source on the second basement, only a small one at the entrance. Phalai looked down. It seemed that the three-headed dog was not down there. "Go down and solve it." "Is there something down there?" Phal saw Phalai's action. "Nothing. Even if there is, you don't have to be afraid," Phalai said calmly. "Speak clearly. What's down there?" "You saw it too." "There's nothing down there." Although Phalai had made a solemn promise, Phor was still a little worried. However, she could not afford to waste any more time. She handed the baby to Phalai and jogged down the stairs. The second basement was very dark. There was also a huge water trough that led to Mirror Lake. Because of the storm outside, large amounts of water kept pouring into the trough. Thankfully, the design of the water trough was special. The lake water would not completely pour in. Phor had a feeling that the second floor of the basement gave her a terrifying feeling. After the mansion was built, she knew that it was a second basement. Phalai had said that it was used for storage, but there was nothing here now. Also, what was the opening in the water trough for? She had no idea what Phalai and Qinzhao were thinking. A few minutes later, Phal hurriedly finished and ran back up. Phalai sealed the passageway. Her actions made Phor suspicious again. The first basement had originally been a lounge. Although it had been modified into a surgery room, many functions were still preserved. At least they did not have to worry about starving or freezing here. Phal and Shayla both suspected that Qinzhao and Phalai had built the basement so well to deal with a storm like this. It was indeed a good place to hide. Please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 14:16. Midnight. The wind began to weaken and the evil spirit's attack frequency also decreased. Occasionally 1 or 2 troublesome evil spirits would run out. But they were no longer a threat. It started in the morning and continued until now. Qinzhao had never wanted to hug his second child as much as he did now. Gradually the wind stopped but the rain continued. "Mr. Qin, it's 1 in the morning." Knots and Daryl Moore had been standing for a while. They couldn't stand anymore and had been sitting on the ground since nightfall. Of course, they still found a few planks to cushion their butts. Qinzhao could finally relax. But he didn't completely relax. After all, his second daughter's third night had started very strangely. Who knew if it would end normally? Qin Zhao rubbed his hands. He could finally open the entrance to the basement. He opened the entrance to the basement. At the moment, Shara was asleep on the sofa. Fei Lai and Four were each hugging a child. But Fei Lai seemed to sense something. She opened her eyes and saw Qin Zhao. Qin. Yes. Qin Zhao walked up and looked at the baby in Fei Lai's arms. He hugged her gently. Thank you. You too, Fei Lai replied. At the same time she handed the baby to Qin Zhao. Do you want a hug? Yes. Qin Zhao gently picked up his second child. The little girl was slightly red. She put her little finger in her mouth and sucked. Qin Zhao didn't dare to use any strength at all. It was like the first time he'd hugged Zhilin. He was afraid that he would hurt the magical little life in his arms if he used any strength. But Qin Zhao also wanted to toss the little girl in his arms. This feeling was really special. Fei Lai, what should we call our child? Just then, Blackie floated over and looked at the baby in Qin Zhao's arms. Qin Zhao, I want to be her godfather. Is that okay? Qin Zhao nodded. Blackie had never made a request. This was the only time he'd made one. Qin Zhao wouldn't reject it. He couldn't. Blackie couldn't help but reach out his black and dry palm. His finger gently touched the baby's face. But very soon, Blackie retracted it in fear. It was as if he was afraid of defiling a baby. Dad. Just then Zhilin felt Qin Zhao. She immediately opened her eyes and called out loudly. Little Zhilin's cry woke Shala and Four up. Qin, why did you come down? Is it over? Yes, Qin Zhao said. The wind has stopped but it's still raining. Miss Navitz, Miss Dailymore, please rest in the RV. Qin Zhao sent the two girls to the underground garage. Thankfully the garage was underground. Otherwise their losses would be huge. Putting aside the two trucks that were usually used to import goods, the value of the two Porsches and the RV was as high as $7 million. Even if the house was destroyed, it was less than $2 million. As long as his family was safe, this loss was worth it. Qin Zhao carried little Zhilin while Fei Lai carried her sister. Little Zhilin, aren't you tired? I'm not sleepy. Zhilin blinked and looked at Qin Zhao. Dad, Mom, do you want to rest? Zhilin has to look after the baby for Mom and Dad. Dad, Mom, can you let the baby sleep with Zhilin in the future? Zhilin will definitely take good care of the baby. Qin Zhao smiled. It was impossible to sleep together. Qin Zhao planned for his second daughter to sleep separately after the first few days, just like how Zhilin had done before. Zhilin was actually very tired too. She had been playing with the baby the entire day and hadn't been idle at all. She was even more attentive to the baby than Fei Lai. Soon she fell asleep on the sofa. The next day Qin Zhao and Fei Lai were woken up by Zhilin. Zhilin had woken up at some point and was mumbling in front of the cradle. When Shala and Four walked out of the basement and saw the flattened mansion, they were both shocked. Luckily they had hidden in the basement yesterday. Otherwise it was hard to imagine what would have happened. Then Four and Shala left. Navats and Dailymore prepared to leave too. Mr. Qin, I have an empty mansion. Do you want to borrow it? Dailymore only wanted to build a good relationship with Qin Zhao now. Yesterday Qin Zhao had shocked her and Navats too much. Qin Zhao tactfully rejected Dailymore's suggestion. Qin Zhao had his own plans. The beach mansion would be completed in about a month. Before that his family planned to stay at the association for a while. After the two left, Qin Zhao and Fei Lai also started packing, preparing to go to the association. Of course their house had been blown away. What could they pack? They just had to gather all the pets and go to the headquarters together. Just then Qin Zhao's phone rang. It was Denver. The brewery seemed to have suffered some damage due to the storm and had to stop production for a few days. Denver was currently in Denver preparing for the beer festival, so he couldn't come back for now. He could only leave it to the higher-ups in the factory. Qin Zhao understood. With the strength of the storm yesterday, they were lucky that the factory hadn't been blown away. Of course, this was also related to Fellwood's dedication. After all, this was a project Qin Zhao had commissioned. Fellwood was practically supervising the entire process. Any small quality problem would make him angry. Qin Zhao didn't call the association. He didn't know if the association had been greatly affected by the storm. Driving the RV to the association, Qin Zhao saw the collapsed outer walls. The iron gate had also been blown down. The headquarters wasn't damaged though. Qin Zhao was very satisfied. Seeing Qin Zhao's car, the people from the association immediately ran out. But when they saw the swaddle in Feilai's arms and her deflated stomach, everyone cried out in shock. "Well, Miss Feilai, who's the baby in your arms? Miss Feilai, you gave birth already? When did it happen?" The chatter of the people nearby immediately woke up the sleeping baby. As soon as the baby woke up, he started crying. Shocked, everyone looked at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao and little Zherlin, who was in Qin Zhao's arms, were looking at the crowd with murderous intent. "They go in." Qin Zhao waved his hand. Just then Gaia walked out too. "Qin Feilai." Gaia also came for the baby. "Congratulations." "Thank you. Have you named it?" Chapter 14-17. Qin Zhao and Feilai glanced at each other. "Not yet. Do you have an alternative name? There are a few that we can't decide on." Then everyone huddled together and started talking, giving Qin Zhao and Feilai suggestions. Even Zherlin was no exception. "Dad, Mom, what do you think of Little Angel?" "Angel is too common." Actually, both Qin Zhao and Feilai had thought of this name. Most parents had thought of this name. Little Zherlin still thinks Little Angel is very good. Little Zherlin said unhappily with puffed cheeks. "Kevin, what about Kevin?" Gaia asked. Kevin represented wisdom and beauty. No, Little Angel is better," Zherlin said. "Nana, what about Nana?" West asked. Nana was the name of the Babylonian goddess of light. "Angeli, I think the president's daughter should be named like this, the heroic spear-wielding empress." "Then we should call her Juno," Klaus said. "It means diva." "Clover is better," Harold said. "I still think Little Angel is better." Everyone felt that their name for the baby was better than the others. "Then why don't we write everyone's name on the sign and let them choose?" Feilai asked hesitantly. "Then why don't we write our name on the sign and let them choose?" Everyone's names were not bad. This made it even harder for the two to choose. Qin Zhao also agreed, but the baby couldn't even crawl. How could she choose a name? More importantly, she was still sleeping. After thinking for a while, they decided to use darts to shoot at the target. Whatever they hit would count. Qin Zhao grabbed the baby's arm and threw the dart at the wheel. Boosh, the dart hit the wheel. Everyone looked at it immediately. Larissa. Meaning, fortress. Who gave this name? Qin Zhao asked curiously. It was a nice name with a good meaning. "Okay, it's decided. Larissa it is." "Can't we change it? Isn't Little Angela good?" Zherlin looked at Qin Zhao with tears in her eyes. "Other than this, I'll agree to anything you want." "Really?" "Yes, really." "Okay, I want to share a room with little Larissa." Qin Zhao's mind raced. Zherlin still hadn't given up on the idea. "I feel a little dizzy. I need to rest for a while." "Daddy, don't go. You haven't promised little Zherlin." Seeing that Qin Zhao had escaped, Zherlin immediately turned to look at Feilai. "Well, Mr. Fellwood, are you all right?" "God bless me, I'm fine." "Has the project by the sea been affected?" "Many of the trees we planted were blown down, but the building itself is undamaged. Some of the temporary structures were blown down too. The construction period might be delayed for a few days," Fellwood said honestly. "Well, after the seaside project is completed, go to Mirror Lake and help me rebuild the villa." "Mr. Qin, Mirror Lake Mansion has been destroyed?" "Yes, but it's not because of your quality. It's mainly because I accidentally demolished the house." Fellwood was speechless. Was there such a thing as an accident when demolishing a house? That day Qin Zhao took some time to go to Moon Beach. Apart from the beach, Qin Zhao also named his new home Moon Villa. Moon Villa's project was 80% complete. Now it was being renovated. At the same time, there were trees blown down by the storm. These trees had been planted not long ago. They weren't even rooted in. It was already lucky that they weren't blown away by the storm with a speed of more than 300 kilometers per hour. Moon Villa was a bit messy after the storm, but it was starting to show its grand form. The bright Moon Villa wasn't very big, but it was built on a cliff and it was inlaid. A part of the rock layer at the top of the cliff had been dug out. This was the most difficult part of the project. This part of the rock layer could only be excavated manually. Explosives couldn't be used. Explosives would destroy the entire rock layer. The elevator shaft from the top of the cliff to the beach was also dug through with a drill. The project was very difficult. Now the beach had been cleaned. The gravel had been cleared and thousands of tons of fine sand had been brought over. A few thousand tons of fine sand sounded like a lot, but it was barely enough to cover a dozen kilometers of coastline. Also, because of the erosion of the sea, more sand had to be added every month to maintain the quality of the beach. Because of the storm, a lot of trash had been washed ashore. Now many workers were cleaning the trash on the beach. On the other side of Moon Beach was Sandro National Park. It was surrounded by green mountains and had a great geographical environment. Qin Zhao had considered buying this place because of its good environment. Mr. Qin, I'll replant the trees on the cliff, but I checked the weather forecast. It seems like there'll be another storm in the next month. I'm afraid that the trees will be blown down again. Felwood Cisco had a headache. He tried his best, but some things couldn't be changed. The trees hadn't been planted for long and couldn't take root too deeply. No one could change this. It's okay, Qin Zhao said. You just have to straighten the trees. I'll think of something then. Qin Zhao had already planned to move Eugenius here. Compared to the medium-sized forest at Mirror Lake, Eugenius could be more effective here. There was a larger forest here. Although Sandro National Park didn't belong to Qin Zhao, it didn't belong to anyone either. But since it didn't belong to anyone, the area that Eugenius could control was larger. Eugenius could make the trees grow quickly in a short time. For example, the forest around Mirror Lake. Because of Eugenius' control, it could withstand the storm. Not a single tree fell. The main building of Moon Villa was like an egg. Of course, calling it an egg would be too ugly. As the designer, Felwood Cisco felt that it was a gem. The arc-shaped structure could withstand the wind blowing from all directions. For example, the main building of Moon Villa was undamaged in the tropical storm, which... Mr. Felwood, Qin Zhao asked, when can my family and I move in? Half a month later. Mr. Qin, you can install the butler system soon. There was no problem of excessive formaldehyde in the United States because the decoration here did not allow the use of any coatings containing formaldehyde, not even a little bit. Therefore, there was no problem of ventilation for a few months after the decoration was completed before people could move in. Chapter 14:18. After leaving Moon Beach, Qin Zhao entered the city. The wind and rain had stopped, but the streets were still a mess. The entire city was in chaos. The storm had caused great damage to the city and even the entire west coast. Of course, there were also hundreds of lives. Even before the storm, the Weather Bureau had already sent out warnings many times. But not every family had the means to seek shelter. Or perhaps their shelter facilities were too shabby. Even in the downtown area, there were buildings that had been completely destroyed. Many shops in the city were temporarily closed. According to the Weather Bureau, the storm had broken the record for the strongest tropical storm in the past century. The highest speed of the storm was 372 kilometers per hour. Unparalleled destructive power. Even if placed in the entire world, it would be terrifying. Of course, while the entire world was praying for the Americans themselves acted like nothing had happened. Apart from the people in the affected areas, the people in other states didn't care at all. For example, Denver's beer festival was held as scheduled. Dashin beer became famous throughout the United States, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was famous all over the world. Because Denver dropped a bombshell at Oktoberfest. The owner of Dashin beer and the brewer of Daydream were the same person. Apart from the African continent, there was basically no one in the other continents who didn't know about daydreaming. Even though a few people didn't admit it, most people admitted that Daydream was the world's most famous beer. Everyone flocked to Daydream, but it was priced at $999,999,999,999, and it was priceless. It wasn't that no one could fork out $1 billion, but the key was that Daydream wasn't something Winnip or Mara supermarket could sell at will. And then there's the city of Sacramento, which has been hooked up with daydreams. There were too many interests involved in daydreaming. Daydream was something that most people couldn't buy in their lifetime, but Dashin beer was different. Its market price was slightly higher than regular beer, but most people could afford it. Chin, Winnip said. The second batch of beer from your factory has been shipped to our supermarket, the local supermarket in Los Angeles. There are a dozen supermarket chains in California. Yesterday you sold almost 750,000 cans of beer. The beer factory hasn't resumed production yet, Qin Zhao said helplessly. Oh, Feilai gave birth. Both mother and daughter are safe. What? Production stopped? Wait. What did you say? Say it again. Fei Lai gave birth, Qin Zhao said. It's a daughter. 2 days ago at noon. Why did you only tell me after 2 days? Did you do it on purpose? Forgot, Qin Zhao said. I think you did it on purpose. I'll go to tomorrow. No, I'll go to LA today, Wen Nip said and hung up. Damn, that old thing Laurent is coming again? Qin Zhao's head swelled. No, he couldn't let that old thing come. He called Kareem. Kareem, I don't care what you, Howard, and Kane do. Get Laurent to the hospital in an hour. Kareem nodded. Why? Did Mr. Laurent do something again? Wen Nip should come to LA in the afternoon. If you can send Laurent to the hospital, you can drink as much purple brew as you want when you come. There's no limit. That's what you said. Laurent, you bastard. How many times have I told you to wear a seatbelt even if you're sitting in the back seat? Look at you now. I don't care anymore. I'm going to LA. How was I supposed to know that Kareem would crash when he's such a good driver? Lawrence's face was gloomy. He was seriously injured in the car accident today. His thigh was pinched and he couldn't even walk now. He needed surgery. However, when he heard that Wen Nip was going to LA, his expression became unhappy. Why are you going to LA? Fei Lai already gave birth. 2 days ago. What? Fei Lai gave birth? Is it a boy or a girl? What's the name? Laurent stood up in excitement, but his agitation pulled at his wound. It's a girl, Larissa. Fei Lai and the child are both healthy, Wen Nip said. No, I can't lie here. I have to get out of the hospital. I have to go to LA. Just stay here. Wen Nip glared at Laurent. It's your punishment. No, I want to see my granddaughters and little Jerlin. I haven't seen them in a long time. And that bastard, he can't take care of 2 kids. Wen Nip, bring my granddaughters to Sacramento. That bastard doesn't need to come. I don't want to see him. Wen Nip rolled her eyes at Laurent. If he dared to say something like that to Qin Zhao, he might just kill him. If you want little Jerlin and Larissa, tell Qin and Fei Lai yourself. I can't decide. Okay, just stay in the hospital. I have to catch a plane. Don't leave me in the hospital. Don't leave me in the hospital. I have to go to LA. Wen Nip did not care about Lawrence's cries behind her and strode away. Just like Laurent, she also wanted to see her 2 little granddaughters. Brother, where are you and my niece now? Mom and I went to Mirror Lake and realized that your house is gone. Yura called Qin Zhao. Her mother was sitting in the driver's seat, although her face was expressionless. However, she was still very anxious. After all, Jerlin was still so young and Fei Lai was pregnant. Her due date seemed to be in 2 days. If a person cared, they would inevitably think the worst of things. Seeing that Qin Zhao's house had been flattened, Yura's mother couldn't help but worry. Would Fei Lai and Jerlin be hurt? Your sister-in-law had a baby, Qin Zhao said. We're staying at a hotel now. She already had a baby? Yura asked. Which hotel are you staying at? Chapter 14:19. Dad, why does little Larissa like to sleep so much? He used to be like this too. Kids love to sleep, but they love to move too. When Larissa could crawl, she wouldn't be able to stop. Kids had low stamina and their stomachs couldn't digest high-calorie food. Plus, every time they drank milk, it was either breast milk or cow's milk. Most of the nutrients were used for growth, so there wasn't much energy for babies to move around. Little Jerlin had gone through the same thing, but her weaning process was rather smooth. When a human grew to a certain stage, their need for food would definitely increase. Little Jerlin was very active. The nutrients provided by dairy products couldn't satisfy the human body's needs anymore. The human body would instinctively choose food with higher protein and more nutrients. Qin Zhao didn't understand the mentality of some giant babies who still ate milk as their staple food. Plus, it wouldn't be good for the kids. Qin Zhao and Fei Lai planned to bring little Jerlin and Larissa to stay at a hotel for a few days. After all, if they stayed at the headquarters, it would be inconvenient for Yura's and Fei Lai's mothers to visit them. Qin Zhao was obviously going to stay at Del and Risvar's Harbor Hotel. When Yura and Yura's mother came, they brought a lot of things. They were all baby products, just like when they'd visited little Jerlin before. Actually, many things were the same. Qin Zhao and Fei Lai had already prepared them. But in the eyes of the elders, they could only use what they'd prepared themselves. Others couldn't use what they'd prepared. Every time Qin Zhao and his mother met, They couldn't help but feel distant. His mother nodded. "Where's little Larissa? Let me see." "She's inside. Feilai's holding her." "Grandma, aren't you here to see little Jerlin?" Beside Qin Zhao, little Jerlin raised her head and looked at her mother with watery eyes. "No way. Of course I'm here to see little Jerlin, darling." Mom picked up little Jerlin, kissing and rubbing her. "Jerlin, can you stay at Grandma's place for a few days?" Mom asked. "No, I want to sleep with little Larissa. She'll cry if she doesn't see me." In the past 2 days, whenever Qin Zhao and Feilai weren't around, little Jerlin would definitely be talking to little Larissa. Moreover, he talked tirelessly and endlessly. Sometimes she would fall asleep as she talked. "When little Larissa grows up, I can teach little Larissa how to walk, swim, and climb trees." "Qin Zhao, your house was damaged by the typhoon." "Yes, I've contacted the construction company and asked them to repair the villa. Then come live at my place for the next few months." "Oh, Mom. I'm just going to stay in the hotel for a few days. The new house on the beach is almost done." Qin Zhao still rejected his mother's invitation. Mom was very disappointed, but this answer was expected. When her mother asked this question, she didn't have much hope. When mother took little Larissa and Jerlin, who was already in her arms, the 2 little ones were in her arms. That was an unprecedented feeling of happiness. He couldn't bear to part with it and was reluctant to let it go. His mother stayed for 3 or 4 hours. Before she left, she gave them another lesson. It was as if the 2 of them were newbies. In fact, when Jerlin first came to their house, their mother had already taught them a lesson. Elders were all like this. All they wanted was to stay a little longer. Not long after his mother and Yura left, Winnip came. She stayed right next to Qin Zhao and Feilai's suite. Winnip was almost crazy with joy. She couldn't bear to put her granddaughter down after picking her up. Only when little Larissa needed milk did she reluctantly return her granddaughter to Feilai. "Qin, come out. Let's talk." Qin Zhao followed Winnip to the balcony. "If your brewery goes all out, how many cans of beer can it produce?" "Right now, the brewery produces 3 types of beer. I can't calculate how many cans, but it should be around 600,000 liters a day." 600,000 liters of beer was around 1,000,000 cans. "Can't you increase the production?" "Winnip, isn't 600,000 liters a day enough?" "It's not enough. Just the dozen or so stores in California are enough. Now Mara Supermarket wants to expand across America. There are already 4 new stores outside of California ready to open." "Winnip, you're in contact with Denver, right? You'd better contact Denver about the specific production." Dashin Beer's only channel was Mara Supermarket, so Denver and Winnip were in frequent contact. Winnip had a rough understanding of the brewery's situation. The production problem couldn't be solved in a short time. Ever since the Denver Beer Festival revealed that Dashin Beer and Daydream Beer were brewed by the same person, Dashin Beer became famous. Dashin Beer became famous and its sales increased by several times. The identity of the Daydream brewer was just too useful. Over the past 2 days, Mara Supermarket had a large number of customers every morning. After the supermarket opened for business, they swarmed into the supermarket and started fighting for Dashin Beer. At noon, Dashin Beer would be sold out and Mara Supermarket's customer flow would visibly decrease. Winnip saw this, which was why she was so anxious. Dashin Beer could bring a lot of customers to Mara Supermarket. At the same time, it could stabilize the customer flow. If someone was used to going to a supermarket, there was a high chance that they would go there again. Dashin Beer didn't just bring customers. It also brought market share. "Qin, if you don't have money, I can invest in the brewery and expand its production." Winnip didn't show any emotion when discussing business with Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. First of all, he didn't lack money. Second, the brewery could actually expand production. It was just that they lacked raw materials, so they didn't increase production immediately. Now they were waiting for the wheat after the autumn harvest. Since Dashin Beer was already famous, they had to choose their raw materials carefully. Therefore, both Qin Zhao and Denver preferred to keep their raw materials under the premise of stable production. Kansas dangle wheat was the main raw material for Dashin Beer. The taste was already set. Unless the price of dangle wheat skyrocketed, they wouldn't change the raw material. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version. Chapter 1420. Winnip's suggestion was just a casual one. Even she knew that Qin Zhao wouldn't agree to it. In a company with a clear market prospect and strong profitability, as well as abundant liquidity, there was no way they could accept external funds. Dashin Beer's profitability was too strong. It didn't seem like a brand that had just entered the market. One had to know that Dashin Beer was only a medium-sized beer brand company. Its profitability was already comparable to large beer brands. This was what Winnip was most jealous of. After all, Dashin Beer wasn't a listed company. The money would all go into Qin Zhao's pocket. However, the money wasn't limitless. More accurately, production wasn't limitless. If it was another brewery, they could produce limitless. If they didn't have enough production, they could open branches and increase production infinitely. But Dashin Beer couldn't do that. One of the raw materials of Dashin Beer was Mirror Lake's water. Mirror Lake's water mainly came from the waterfall. The waterfall's flow was limited. The waterfall's flow was also the brewery's upper limit. Of course, it was still very difficult to reach the waterfall's upper limit. At least with their current production, they were still very far from the upper limit. Winnip's arrival gave Qin Zhao and Fei Lai a rare moment of leisure. They could spend some alone time. Winnip wanted nothing more than to take care of little Jerlin and Larissa on her own. To her, this was the greatest happiness. Qin Zhao finally didn't have to worry about Fei Lai's health anymore. They could fool around for the whole day. They didn't have to care about anything else and only cared about their own happiness. Just then, Qin Zhao and Fei Lai were interrupted by a phone call. "Hey Qin Zhao, it's Li Qiong." "Oh Li Qiong, when are you free?" The next day after the storm, Qin Zhao called Li Qiong. He'd said before that he needed her to install and debug the butler system. Li Qiong also had a job, so she promised Qin Zhao that she would call Qin Zhao after arranging the work. "After today I'll be free." Li Qiong's laughter came from the phone. "Did you quit?" Qin Zhao vaguely understood what Li Qiong meant. "The company doesn't allow me to ask for leave, so I could only quit," Li Qiong said helplessly. "Oh. It seems that I caused you to lose your job. I'm really sorry." "Are you kidding? You have to pay me $400,000, but my weekly salary is less than $3,000. Even an idiot would know what to choose." Li Qiong chatted casually with Qin Zhao. "Right, what did you study in university?" "I'm philosophy and artificial intelligence," Li Qiong said. "Philosophy and artificial intelligence? Isn't there too much of a difference between these two majors?" You're not an expert in this field, so you might not know that the current technological development of artificial intelligence is largely based on the human philosophical system, so these two disciplines are far from being as biased as you think. "Alright, do you have time tomorrow?" "If I have time tomorrow, I'll ask the security company to send the equipment over." "No problem. I'll contact you tomorrow." "All right." Qin Zhao had just hung up and was about to continue being intimate with Fei Lai when his phone rang again. "Hello Mr. Andrews, what can I do for you?" "Mr. Qin, I should congratulate you," Andrews said in a polite tone. "Congratulations on the huge success of your company." As the person directly in charge of Qin Zhao's finances, Andrews was like Qin Zhao's steward. He knew all of Qin Zhao's funds like the back of his hand. Of course, he also knew that the popular Dashin beer was Qin Zhao's private property. If the tax bureau asked Andrews to investigate Qin Zhao and Andrews was willing to cooperate, Qin Zhao would definitely lose a lot of money. Of course, Andrews would not do such a thing. He was the most professional financial steward. His first duty was to protect his client's private property. However, Andrews really admired Qin Zhao from the bottom of his heart. To him, Qin Zhao had invested so much money into building a beer brand. It was a thankless effort. At least in the next 3 years, Andrews predicted that Qin Zhao would either lose a lot of money and accept the loan agreement from the bank, or he would not be able to survive. However, no one expected Dashin beer to be so popular. Currently, Qin Zhao had invested around $60 million, but the market value had already reached $1 billion. What kind of concept was this? In just half a year, Dashin beer's return was more than 15 times. Moreover, the market prospects were very good. He believed that Dashin beer's market value would increase further. Of course, the banks wanted to enter the market as soon as possible. The earlier they entered the market, the more profits they would get. Just like Penguin and TB in China, the original shares were the most valuable. Even the banks could not sit still. Who wouldn't want a share in the face of such huge profits? "You're not just congratulating me, right?" "Huh. Mr. Qin, Do you intend to accept external investments? It's still too early, Qin Zhao said. Right now, Dashan beer was limited by its production and distribution rate, so it was only valued at a little over $1 billion. Qin Zhao was confident that he could multiply Dashan beer's value. By then, if others wanted to enter the market, it would not be just a few tens of millions of dollars. Qin Zhao also knew that he could not hold all the shares in his hands forever. When necessary, he would still have to give away the shares. Otherwise, if he made too much money, others would definitely be jealous and cause trouble at various stages. It would be really hard to defend against that. However, Qin Zhao could stall for time. Before Dashan beer's value reached his expectations, he could hold on to the shares for now. Andrews thought for a moment and said, "Our bank is willing to buy Mr. Chen's shares at a 200% premium." Qin Zhao gasped. "Is this Amira's idea?" "No, it's a decision made by the higher-ups of the bank after discussion." Andrews' meaning was clear. The bank's 200% premium made the bank bear a lot of risk. If Dashan beer's value didn't increase as expected, the bank would lose a lot. But similarly, if the value increased or even exceeded expectations, the bank would make money. Risk and profit definitely existed together. Even if Qin Zhao knew that his Dashan beer could make money, he could not stop the bank from making money. He would wait until the market value was high before letting the bank in. The bank was not stupid. Chapter 1421. If the bank can agree to one condition, Qin Zhao said, I'll accept the bank buying my shares. Usually there were two ways to enter the market. One was to buy shares and the other was to inject capital. Dashan beer didn't need a large capital injection. If it did, it wouldn't benefit Qin Zhao at all. Instead, it would dilute his shares. If he bought shares, it would be a real transaction. Money and goods would be exchanged. In the long run, it would be like splitting Qin Zhao's profits and giving part of the money to the bank. However, Qin Zhao could obtain a large amount of profits in a short time. What condition? First, if the bank wants to sell the shares, they have to sell them to me at the market price. At the same time, the bank can't interfere with Dashan beer's production and management. Then only dividends. Andrews asked. When will dividends start? Next year. Dashan beer isn't a public company after all. Then how many shares can you transfer? 20%. Can't it be more? Andrews asked. No, I've already given 20% to the company's executives. I can't give away any more. I'll report Mr. Chen's idea to the higher-ups. I'll wait for your good news. After hanging up, Qin Zhao couldn't be bothered with Fei Lai anymore. He picked up his phone and called Denver. Denver, in the next 30 days, try to increase the production of the beer factory. It's best if the sales are as high as possible. The bank wants to buy my shares at a 200% premium. I understand, Mr. Qin. Denver's heart jumped. Mr. Qin, I hope to buy 5% as soon as possible. Of course, we're family. If Denver continued to drag it out, his personal price wouldn't be low either. If even the bank was willing to pay a 200% premium, it meant that the bank was very optimistic about Dashan beer's potential. As Dashan beer's sales increased, its valuation would also increase. By then, the price he would pay for the shares would also increase. If possible, he also wanted to buy 20% directly like the bank. However, he didn't have that much cash. Plus, he didn't have the courage to take 5% first. With 5% of the shares in his hands, he wouldn't lose too much even if he lost too much. It was within his acceptable range. If he made a profit, he'd have more capital to buy the shares Qin Zhao promised. Qin Zhao had promised Denver and the bank 40%, but he still had one key point. That was the right of first refusal. Even if someone bought the shares at a price 10 or 100 times higher, Qin Zhao would still have the right of first refusal, and he would buy them at the market price. Unless Qin Zhao didn't want to buy, the shares wouldn't go away. Now Qin Zhao just had to wait for Dashan beer. Then he could delay the negotiation with the bank. By then, a 200% premium would be 3 times the market price. A market price of $1 billion is equivalent to a price of $3 billion. For 20% of the shares, the bank would have to pay at least $600 million US. Thinking that he could earn $600 million in one go, Qin Zhao felt like he was floating in the air. However, if he had to pay tax on the $600 million, he would have to pay at least $200 million. By then, Qin Zhao would actually get more than $300 million. So he had to. 2 he chin he. This legal tax avoidance required the help of the bank, and this transaction was originally done with the bank, so the bank would definitely cooperate with him. As the person in charge of Dashin Beer, Denver only said a few words in the media, which directly caused the number of customers in Mara supermarket to increase several times. Although there was only so much beer available, the number of customers skyrocketed. According to Denver, the current production of Big Mountain beer was at most 800,000 liters a day. Those customers who originally planned to buy or had this idea all flocked to the supermarket as if they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to buy it. In fact, most customers couldn't buy beer. Winnip knocked on the door of the other room they'd booked. She pulled Qin Zhao aside and said a bunch of things. Qin Zhao's attitude was clear. Personal feelings were personal feelings and business was business. Winnip couldn't do anything. Unless she said something harsh to Qin Zhao, he wouldn't compromise on this. Winnip also wanted the shares of Mountain Beer, but how could Qin Zhao give them to her? He sold it to the bank because the bank gave him a 200% premium. It was sold to Denver because Denver was an executive of Dashin Beer. One could even say that he was the main contributor. What about Winnip? Putting aside personal feelings, could Winnip give him a 200% premium? Usually, as a supplier, they were always restricted by the channel and had to look at the channel's mood. But that was a buyer's market, while Dashin Beer was a seller's market. It wasn't whether he could sell it or not, but whether he was willing to sell it or not. Therefore, from a business perspective, Winnip couldn't threaten Qin Zhao. Instead, she had to worry if Qin Zhao would tear up the contract and start supplying to other supermarkets. Of course, Qin Zhao and Winnip's cooperation was quite pleasant for now. They didn't plan on tearing up the contract. As for the dispute in the past 2 days, it was just a small conflict. It couldn't even be considered a conflict. Actually, Qin Zhao knew that his business talent was limited. He only knew the basic business rules. If the price was right, sell. Don't. If there was money, invest. Don't. It was a simple business rule. As for the more complicated operations in the financial system, Qin Zhao really didn't understand them, so he wouldn't touch them. For example, funds, stocks, and so on. With Qin Zhao's knowledge, even a few $100 million would be wasted if he played with them. The next day, Qin Zhao brought his family to Mingyue Villa. Qin, why is it called Mingyue Villa? Winnip teased Jerlin as she looked at the buildings on the cliff in the distance. Because I think the name is cool, Qin Zhao said matter-of-factly. Qin Zhao's naming skills were really lacking. Even Larissa's name had been obtained by throwing darts. Qin Zhao's brain was about to explode if he had to name a villa. After thinking about it, he decided to use a more China-style name. Qin Zhao was considering if he should give Mingyue Villa a more iconic name. What kind of logo should he make? Qin Zhao thought about it but couldn't think of anything. Firstly, it couldn't be low class. Secondly, it could represent Mingyue Villa. Chapter 1422. Qin Zhao had been thinking about what kind of beauty he should get. Dad, what are you thinking about? Jerlin looked at Qin Zhao as if she'd sensed something. Baby, do you think our new home is still lacking something? A moon in the sky. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. He was already very powerful, but he still didn't have the ability to hang a moon in the sky. Wait, it wasn't completely impossible. Old Turtle's internal alchemy could be considered a moon. However, it seemed too high profile to hang Old Turtle's inner core in the sky. Forget it, I'm just letting my imagination run wild. Dad, did you think of something? Jerlin was too smart. She could guess most of it from Qin Zhao's expression. Winnip, who sat in the front, thought it was a child's babbling. The car stopped. They'd arrived at Mingyue Villa. At this time, the inside and outside of the Mingyue Villa were filled with construction vehicles and workers. When Felwood heard that Qin Zhao was here, he immediately rushed over. Mr. Qin, you're here. Yes. Did the security company send the mainframe over? Yes. They're installing it in the basement, but the people for debugging and installation aren't here yet. Okay, I'll call and ask. Qin Zhao called Li Qiong and asked when she could arrive. Li Qiong was already on her way. She'd left early, but because Mingyue Beach was rather remote, she'd taken the wrong way. Now she was turning back. Half an hour later, Li Qiong finally arrived. When she reached the bottom of the cliff, Li Qiong was also shocked by the majestic manor. It had to be said that Mingyue Villa wasn't very big. At least, Amira's manor was much bigger than Mingyue Villa when she'd attended the party last time. But the key was the shape and location of Mingyue Villa. It gave people a very shocking feeling. After passing through a steep slope of more than 10 degrees, Chen Zhao drove for about 1,000 meters to the top of the cliff and parked the car in an empty space outside the manor. When Li Qiong got out, she saw Chen Zhao and a beautiful woman beside him. Chen Zhao, Li Qiong greeted. This is my girlfriend, Fei Lai. Hello, Miss Fei Lai. Li Qiong walked up and shook hands with her. This is my classmate from China. He's also the one who helped me install the butler system. Have you sent the mainframe? Li Qiong went straight to the point after exchanging pleasantries with the two. It's already here. The people from that company are installing the mainframe. Yes, where is the mainframe installed? Take me there. Chen Zhao brought Li Qiong to the basement. The manor's basement had 3 floors, one more than Mirror Lake Villas. One of the floors was used to install the housekeeper's mainframe. At the same time, there were dozens of monitors. Li Qiong communicated with the people from the security company. The people from the security company left after they finished installing the mainframe. They were only responsible for selling and installing the mainframes. As for the debugging of the system, it was up to the customers to find someone to install it. At first, Li Qiong was a little unfamiliar with it. After all, it was her first time coming into contact with this kind of mainframe system. However, she soon got the hang of it and connected to the company's satellite system. At the same time, a satellite surveillance image appeared on the largest monitor in the middle. Chen Zhao, this is the image of the main control satellite. The other displays are used for monitoring devices. If someone destroys the monitoring devices, the satellite will automatically lock onto the area. If it's at night, can the satellite detect it? The principles of satellite surveillance and video surveillance are different. Satellites are divided into ultra-close range surveillance, heat source surveillance, sensor surveillance, dynamic surveillance and sound surveillance. Moreover, this company's satellites have 4 types of surveillance at the same time. For example, this is the case. Li Qiong started demonstrating. She said into the microphone, "Turn to the beach surveillance and analyze all suspicious creatures." Then the image on the main monitor started jumping. In the end, a picture of a heat source appeared. There were more than 10 heat sources in the picture. Through analysis, there are 11 people in this area. They all belong to Fellwood Engineering Company. No bad records. A gentle female voice sounded. Chen Zhao's eyes brightened. This voice was more advanced than the housekeeper system's voice in Mirror Lake Villa. Moreover, through this kind of surveillance, everyone's identity could be analyzed. He had to admit that this function was really powerful. Turn to sound surveillance, Li Qiong said. Now, other than the image, there was also a lot of noise on the main monitor. It was impossible to distinguish the voices. Hey Rod. Where are we going tonight? Golden Sea Bar. Want to go together? Sure. This was the sound that the computer had analyzed, reorganized and converted into sound. Chen Zhao really didn't expect technology to reach such a level. Of course, it was only for the rich now. Then Li Qiong started demonstrating other surveillance modes. This company's housekeeper system is like the AI in Iron Man Jarvis. It's very powerful and can even do some simple communication. As long as it's connected to the internet, it can be upgraded every time the company .s the system. It also ensures that the hardware won't be obsolete in the next 5 years. In other words, if the company upgrades the hardware in the next 5 years, they have the responsibility to upgrade your main system too. This was normal. After all, including the installation and debugging, the machine had been bought for nearly $10 million. If it was obsolete in 1 or 2 years, no one would be happy no matter how rich they were. Chen Zhao, you have pets at home, right? Yes. There is a pet's characteristic image generated here. Bring your pet to this monitor and let the system record your pet's photo and characteristics. Then your pet will run to a corner to play. If you can't find it for a while, you can use the butler system to immediately find your pet's location. Moreover, it can distinguish some creatures that are harmful to your pet. Once your pet is threatened, it will immediately alert you. Okay, that's good. Also, there seem to be sharks in this area. You can also use this system to scan and monitor sharks. If a shark appears near your beach, it can alert you immediately. Chen Zhao started to feel that this system was really awesome. It was much better than the housekeeper system. It was really powerful. Is technology so advanced now? Actually, there are many new technologies in the world which are what we often call black technology. Some of them are quite suitable for rich people like you. Recommend some to me. Chapter 1423. In fact, the butler system alone was enough to satisfy all of Qin Zhao's family's needs. The other advanced technologies were just icing on the cake. There were no truly epic-making technologies and there were no revolutionary products. Some of them were already known technologies and then new ones were being developed. For example, the satellites of the security company were actually government and military satellites modified and put into the civilian market. However, normal companies couldn't get the license to operate satellites. The truly advanced part was the butler system's own intelligence. The pet management system was just a magically modified version of the facial recognition system. Of course, there were more functions that Qin Zhao's family had to experience by themselves after moving in. The most commonly used functions were facial recognition, voice recognition, and fingerprint recognition. The not-so-big butler system had already turned Mingyue Villa into a small sci-fi town. Li Qiong spent a week debugging the butler system for Qin Zhao. When she was done, she received a check for $500,000. Li Qiong was quite pitiful. Qin Zhao didn't express any intention to take things further with her. They weren't the same kind of people after all. However, a check of $500,000 was enough to satisfy her. During this period, Dashan beer's market value reached $1.3 billion. This was mainly because after the tropical storm, Dashan beer temporarily stopped production and went on the market again, performing strongly in the market. It sold more than 1 million cans a day and was already the leader in California. There was also news that Dashan beer would be sold in America. This attracted the attention of investors. More than 20 investors had already inquired about Dashan beer. They wanted to buy or invest in Dashan beer. The bank was even more anxious about the negotiation. They bought 20% of the shares at a 200% premium. If they couldn't come to an agreement, Dashan beer's market value would probably exceed $1.5 billion. In the end, the bank would probably have to pay a much higher price than the initial estimate. By then, the negotiation to buy the shares might end in failure. Therefore, the bank bought 22% of the shares at a market value of $1.4 billion plus a 200% premium. That was $924 million for 22% of the shares. Although the bank would help Qin Zhao start the tax avoidance plan, he still had to deduct a portion of the tax in the end. This was unavoidable. In the end, Qin Zhao would get around $800 million. However, this money wouldn't come in all at once. After all, tax avoidance had to be done bit by bit. It couldn't be done all at once. $200 million had already entered his account. This was the first time he had earned such a large sum of money since Nanchi Island. Moreover, in the next half a year, around $800 million would gradually flow into his personal account. Mr. Qin, what do you think of this design? Orford Robier asked. If I say I want to increase the budget, can you change the plan? Qin Zhao asked. Now that he had money, he couldn't help but want to spend it. Ofer Labil was in a difficult position. After all, it had taken more than a month and a design team of dozens of people to complete the design. If it was a small modification, he could accept it. However, overthrowing the design plan was unacceptable to him. How much does Mr. Qin want to increase the budget? Orford Robier asked. I want a $300 million yacht. Ofer Lerby almost spat out water. Mr. Qin, are you serious? Yes. Qin Zhao nodded. A yacht worth $300 million US dollars? It was $200 million US dollars more than the original budget. A yacht worth $300 million US dollars was enough to make it into the top 10 yachts in the world. Mr. Qin, no problem. We can come up with a new plan, but it'll take a month. Sure, let's do it. Qin Zhao nodded. This man wasn't just rich. He was super rich. Orford Robier had thought that Qin Zhao would only increase the budget by 10 or 20 million. His team of designers had worked for more than a month. From design to labor and time, it would cost a few million. Of course, he wasn't willing to redo it. But now, Qin Zhao actually wanted to increase the budget by 200 million. Then there would be no problem at all. Just the thought of bringing such a business deal to the company made Orf Lerby's blood boil. Yachts were one of the most valuable luxury goods in the world. Within 5 years, they could maintain their value by 90%. Within 20 years, they could maintain their value by 70%. During these 20 years, technology would change and the depreciation of the currency would far exceed the value of the yacht. This meant that if Qin Zhao designed the yacht with a budget of 300 million, it could still sell for 200 million in 20 years. This was why rich people liked to play with yachts. When they got tired of them, they could sell them and get a new one. Or, if they needed emergency funds, they could get them through exclusive yachts. Don't think that all rich people were unreasonable. With this kind of money, they could buy a new one. Actually, not everyone was willing to wait 1 or 2 years or even 3 or 4. Yacht construction technology had changed. Unless it was a super cruise ship, it would take more than 3 years. If it was just a yacht, it would take no more than 1.5 years, including the design time. This meant that Qin Zhao would get his own yacht by the end of next year. Oh, do your company have any ready-made yachts worth tens of millions? Before the custom-made yacht is completed, I need a replacement. Yes, of course, Orford Robier said excitedly. In just a year, Qin Zhao was actually willing to spend tens of millions to buy a replacement. The world of rich people was indeed unreasonable. Of course, Orford Robier definitely wouldn't make money from this yacht. After all, he had to give Qin Zhao some commission. Mr. Qin, what's your budget? Less than 50 million. Sure. I'll give you the yacht models and quotations that our company has in storage as soon as possible. It won't take more than 3 days. Please wait a moment. Oliver Lawbill sent the news back to the headquarters on the same day. It was a $300 million deal, and this was the biggest deal Seagate had ever received. No one dared to underestimate this deal. In the past, Qin Zhao didn't really care about yachts because he didn't want to live on the sea even if he spent so much money. However, in the past year, after going out many times, he felt that yachts were a necessity. Chapter 1424. At the beginning of August, the construction of Mingyue Villa was finally completed. In fact, the basic construction had already been completed half a month ago. They could already move in. There were still some workers left, but it wouldn't affect the occupancy of the villa. Nevertheless, Qin Zhao still decided to move in after the construction was completed. After all, there were a lot of shameful things in the house. If the construction workers found something unusual, it was hard to guarantee that the news would leak. Qin Zhao, Fei Lai, Zhirlin, and Larissa entered their new home. Behind them was a large group of pets of various sizes. Qin Zhao put Zhirlin on the ground. The first thing he did was to hang the river painting in the living room. Actually, Qin Zhao didn't hide from Fei Lai when he went in and out of the painting many times. Fei Lai also knew that this China landscape painting was different. Zhirlin carried the kitten Samuel. Samuel had been in the house for more than a year, but it still hadn't grown. It was still the size of a kitten. This was because Samuel's original body was too powerful, so his projection couldn't grow in this world. The others, such as Beelzebub, Raymond, Carrie, King Kong, Amon, Black Ma, and White Ma, had all grown quite a bit. Amon's body had changed the most. If he appeared now, he would definitely look like a monster. Little Zhirlin was already screaming, running wildly inside and out of the manor. The villa was 600 square meters. It had 4 floors above ground and 3 underground. There were 2 elevators that led to the Bright Moon Beach at the bottom of the cliff. The total area was around 4,000 square meters. The entire villa was more than 20,000 square meters. Little Larissa arrived at the new home. She squeaked, trying to break free from Fei Lai's arms. Qin Zhao and Fei Lai carried little Larissa to the yard. The sea breeze blew in their faces, bringing with it a bit of saltiness. Actually, too much sea breeze wasn't good for one's skin. The sea breeze was corrosive to a certain extent. However, Qin Zhao's family had never worried about their skin. The courtyard was to the left of the villa. It was more than 200 square meters. A crepe myrtle tree shone in the wind, filling the courtyard with purple mist. Crepe myrtle trees had many pests. Very few people planted them because touching the bark occasionally would cause allergies. However, in order to plant a crepe myrtle tree in the courtyard, Qin Zhao had vaccinated and removed the pests. He also buried an angelic crystal under the tree. Qin Zhao knew that Zhirlin loved to climb trees. And when little Larissa grew up and hung out with Zhirlin every day, there was no guarantee that she wouldn't follow Zhirlin's temper. The glass fence went around the entire courtyard, and the outside of the fence was the cliff. The cliff was about 40 meters away from the ground. It was neither too high nor too low. Making it a glass fence was mainly for the sake of the 2 little ones at home. They were likely to drill their heads through it, and it would be dangerous then. Therefore it was made into a glass guardrail. They couldn't get through even if they wanted to. Master, may I ask if we can start preparing dinner now? An underling ran up to them. Due to the destruction of the Mirror Lake Villa, the lesser demons never had the chance to come out. Now that Qin Zhao had finally moved, they finally had a chance to show off their talents. They didn't have to idle around like before. Go. Qin Zhao nodded. Move the stuff to the beach. Our family will have a barbecue on the beach tonight. Since he had just moved in, there were still some trivial matters that needed to be dealt with. For example, asking the whole family to record the facial recognition and voice recognition of the butler system. In the evening, the sun set in the west. The surface of the sea was completely illuminated in red. The scene was so dazzling that one couldn't look away. Soon after, the bright moon rose from the sea. This scene was not inferior to the setting sun and the sea before. Amon and Little Nine also appeared in the sea under the night sky. In the sea, the two of them could play unscrupulously. If it was Mirror Lake, they wouldn't dare to do anything. They were afraid that the waves would wash into the villa and Qin Zhao would punish them. In the sea, the birds could fly freely in the sky and the fish could swim freely in the sea. There was also a cave under the cliff. It was the new home Qin Zhao had specially prepared for Blackie. There was no need to hide it. Anyway, no one could climb there. Little 3, little 2, little 1, come out and play, Qin Zhao called at the cave. The three-headed dog poked its head out and looked at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao pointed at the sea. Little 9 is calling you. Woof. The three-headed dog jumped down from a height of more than 20 meters and landed on the beach. Let's go down too. Qin Zhao's family went down. A group of underlings were busy on the beach, running up and down. Fei Lai, put little Larissa on the sand. You don't have to carry her all the time. Yeah, Mom, little Jerlin said proudly. When Jerlin was little Larissa's age, she could already crawl. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes at Jerlin. This little girl already knew how to boast. Qin, should we have a moving party this time? Fei Lai asked. Let's wait for Jerlin's birthday, Qin Zhao said. Her birthday is less than half a month away. When Qin Zhao had brought Jerlin back from San Francisco, it was half September last year. She was already a month old then. Her date of birth was August 17th. However, Qin Zhao hesitated. Should he call Jerlin's other relative Alex over? In the end, Alex was Jerlin's aunt too. Jerlin struggled to help Larissa up. She wanted to carry Larissa, but she wasn't strong enough. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough strength, so she could only help him up. Little Larissa, use your legs. You need to use your legs. You're so stupid. In the end, Larissa's legs gave out and she fell onto the sand. Jerlin couldn't stand properly either and fell onto the ground. Roar, roar. Suddenly there was a roar from the sea. Then Little 9 came ashore. Qin Zhao saw that one of its heads seemed to be holding something in its mouth. Upon closer inspection, it was actually an adult great white shark more than 6 meters long. Little 9 tossed the shark before Qin Zhao and Fei Lai, looking like he was going to reward them. Qin Zhao's face darkened. Little 9, eat it yourself. What's the point of giving such a big shark to us? Also, shark meat isn't delicious. Master, shark meat can be eaten after processing, the underling said, running to Qin Zhao. Shark fins are also delicious. I've heard of shark fins, but can shark meat really be eaten? Qin Zhao asked, confused. Qin Zhao knew the general reason. Sharks didn't have a urinary system. Their urine came from their skin, so shark meat was very smelly. It had the smell of urine. Cut off the shark's fins. Little 9 can eat the rest. Don't waste it. Also, eat all the sharks within 10 kilometers of the coastline. After all, they'd settled here. Qin Zhao couldn't let the sharks continue wreaking havoc here. Chapter 1425. Qin Zhao was sitting on the rooftop with Jerlin and Larissa, enjoying the sea breeze and sunlight. Suddenly an untimely phone call came. Butler, answer the phone, Qin Zhao said lazily. Every corner of the Bright Moon Villa and Bright Moon Beach was equipped with sound detectors. Qin Zhao could talk to the butler system and give orders at any corner of Moon Villa and Moon Beach. Hey Qin, I heard that Fei Lai's child is already born, right? Robio's voice sounded. Yeah, did you hear about it too? Yes. When can Fei Lai come back to work? Robio exposed his intentions. Robio had no choice. The Angel Beach Coastal Rescue Team really lacked people. The coastal rescue team had long working hours, high work intensity and average benefits. Furthermore, there were high requirements for the members' physical fitness. Not everyone could join just because they wanted to. Feilai's personality and physique were outstanding in the coastal rescue team. She was also kind and responsible for her work. So Robio wanted to pull Feilai back. Feilai had been pregnant before, so he had no choice. But now that the child was born, she should come back to work. What he was afraid of really happened. Qinzhao had a headache. He'd basically told all his friends. Only Robio hadn't been contacted. It wasn't that they weren't close. It was just that Robio had called Feilai to work. Robio, you've heard of the Chinese tradition, right? After giving birth, women have to go into confinement. Yeah. I've heard of it, Robio answered. Feilai's had a child for a month, right? That should be enough, right? You need to do it for 3 years after giving birth. Chen, don't lie to me, okay? I'm serious, Qinzhao said seriously. When Feilai recovers, I plan on having a second child with her. Actually, Qinzhao was already satisfied with 2 children. For now, he didn't plan on having a third child. But he would try to fool Robio if he could. Just then Feilai walked up to the rooftop with fruits. Robio, don't listen to Chen, Feilai said. I plan on returning after the child is 3 months old. Qinzhao screamed. Feilai, are you going to leave me and the children? They're still so young. Do you have the heart to do that? Feilai glanced at him. Stop acting pitiful. Feilai had been cooped up at home for almost a year. He was about to go moldy. Qinzhao didn't want Feilai to leave. He thought that it would be best if Feilai stayed at home every day and lived alone with him. But he couldn't force it. He and Feilai weren't married yet. Even if they got married in the future, they couldn't stop Feilai from working and doing what she liked. Right, Robio, it's little Jerlin's birthday on the 15th of this month. We're planning to have a birthday party for her. Why don't you come with the coastal rescue team? No problem, but I need to think about what gift to prepare for the little princess. Uncle Robio, little Jerlin is very happy that you're here. There's no need to prepare a special gift. Little Jerlin's words were sweet. Qinzhao sighed again and again. He stood up, wanting to jump from the roof into the sea below. The other side of the rooftop was the sea. Just as Qinzhao was about to jump down, Feilai suddenly stopped him. Qinzhao froze. This height wasn't a problem for him. But on second thought, he couldn't make a wrong and dangerous demonstration in front of a child. Qinzhao smiled awkwardly. Little Jerlin's dimples appeared on her face. Daddy's naughty. Mommy scolded me. Little Jerlin was only 1 year old after her birthday, but her little brain was already smarter than a 4 or 5-year-old child's. Just then, a patch of blood appeared on the surface of the sea. Qinzhao looked over and saw a shark struggling on the surface. However, Amon and Little Nine weren't nearby. They'd gone to the nearby sea to investigate the terrain. If it wasn't the 2 of them, then what attacked the shark? Was it another shark? It wouldn't be surprising if sharks killed each other. Sharks like to kill each other. To them, their own kind was also on their list of food. But the shark wasn't small. It should be a tiger shark more than 5 meters long. Generally speaking, marine creatures that grow to this size, unless it is a highly intelligent creature like a killer whale, other marine creatures will rarely attack them. Even if they were their own kind, they wouldn't attack an adult tiger shark more than 5 meters long. Before Qinzhao's family had moved in, there had been too many sharks here. Little Nine and Amon couldn't be killed, all of them. These sharks were also very cunning. Once they smelled Little Nine and Amon, they'd flee the area in groups. Once Little Nine and Amon left, they'd return. There seemed to be something here that attracted them. Moreover, most sharks were only 1 or 2 meters long. For Amon and Little Nine, they were too small. Sharks of this size weren't much of a threat to Qinzhao and Feilai, but they were still a threat to Jerlin. Qinzhao picked up his bracelet. It was a function watch, mainly used to communicate with the butler. After going down to the beach, Qinzhao lifted the bracelet and said, "Butler, help me lock onto sharks more than 3 meters in the nearby waters." Not every type of shark needed to be cleaned up. However, any shark more than 1 meter long was a threat to Jerlin. So Qinzhao would rather kill the wrong one than let it go. 823 meters to the left, 15 meters underwater. There's a 3-meter-long rat shark. Through satellite detection, as long as the water quality was clear and the depth wasn't more than 20 meters, the satellite could see through the water. In the coastal waters of Bright Moon Beach, the water quality was not polluted and belonged to the shallow water region. Most of the water was about 10 meters deep. After entering the water, Qin Zhao swam in the direction the butler had pointed out. Qin Zhao had already sensed the rat shark's location. He could see it as soon as he went down. But just then, a black shadow suddenly entered the range of Qin Zhao's little world. At first, Qin Zhao thought that Amon had returned. But the next moment he realized that it wasn't Amon. The black shadow was huge, but it wasn't at Amon's level. It was only 30 meters long. Soon Qin Zhao saw it with his naked eyes. It was a shark. A terrifying two-headed shark. The two-headed shark had come too suddenly. Before Qin Zhao and the rat shark could react, the two-headed shark had bitten the rat shark. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version. Otherwise, their weapons would pose little threat to the two-headed shark in the sea. Their patrol boat was only 10 meters long. If it was hit by the two-headed shark, it was likely to capsize. They had experienced this a few times before. Even bigger ships could be knocked over. This time he chose the patrol boat mainly because the patrol boat itself was small, agile and fast. It was extremely convenient to evade on the sea. "Throw the mine down," Avinko said. This was also their original plan. According to the original plan, they planned to secretly track the two-headed shark, then throw a torpedo on top of the two-headed shark's head and use it to kill the two-headed shark. Actually, they had tried this a few times before. It had only worked the first time and injured the two-headed shark. The next few times, the two-headed shark became even more cautious. The two-headed shark's stamina was really strong. It had swum at such a fast speed for more than 100 kilometers, but it still showed no signs of slowing down. When Qin Zhao sped up, it sped up too. Qin Zhao was already planning to give up. There was no point in chasing it. Just then the two-headed shark suddenly slowed down. Could it be that this fellow was tired from swimming? Qin Zhao immediately sped up and chased after it. But just when Qin Zhao thought that he was about to catch up to the two-headed shark, the two-headed shark suddenly swung its tail and sped up again. Then the two-headed shark suddenly sank. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. Did it think that it couldn't go deeper? Qin Zhao dove into the deeper water. Just then a force came from beside him. Qin Zhao was dumbfounded. The huge force knocked Qin Zhao off course. Then the force came continuously. Fuck, mine. Qin Zhao was dumbfounded. How could there be a mine here? This was already the outer sea. How could someone throw a mine here? Also, was this mutant shark a spirit? It must have lured him here on purpose, right? When Qin Zhao came back to his senses, the two-headed shark had already escaped without a trace. Qin Zhao floated to the surface, depressed. In the distance he saw a patrol boat. It wasn't a coastal patrol boat. The mine had probably been thrown by that boat. Qin Zhao felt that the boat and the two-headed shark were together. Qin Zhao sprinted toward the boat. "Boss, there's someone in the water." "There's someone in the water? How is that possible? How can there be someone here? Could it be someone who fell into the water? That person swims really fast. He's approaching our boat." Avko took the telescope and looked at the sea. There was indeed someone swimming toward them in the waves. But now he was hesitant. Should he stop the boat? "Where's the shark now?" "It's already left our vicinity," Danny said. "Stop the boat," Avko said. By then Qin Zhao had already swum to the patrol boat and jumped onto it. "It's you." Avko and Danny recognized Qin Zhao. Wasn't this the monster-like man they'd met in Abilene, Kansas? Qin Zhao also recognized Avko and Danny. "You two asterisk holes. You plotted against me?" Qin Zhao stared at them angrily. "Mr. Qin, what do you mean? When did we plot against you?" Avko was very displeased with Qin Zhao's attitude. Nevertheless, he didn't want to have a conflict with Qin Zhao. After all, he and Danny had seen how terrifying Qin Zhao was. "Boss, who is he? Doesn't he know where this is? Should we kill him and throw him into the sea to feed the sharks?" Mobile version. Chapter 1427. It was just like how the mercenaries were looking at Qin Zhao with evil intentions. Qin Zhao also looked at the mercenaries with evil intentions. Avinko and Danny broke out in cold sweat. If Qin Zhao hadn't boarded the boat, they might have thought about it. But now that Qin Zhao was on the boat, if there was a conflict on the boat, everyone on the boat would probably die. Mr. Qin, I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't plot against you. I was chasing a shark, Qin Zhao said. But you attacked me with a mine. You're chasing that shark too? Avinko was surprised and happy. Qin Zhao narrowed his eyes. Qin Zhao wasn't being unreasonable. If he thought about it calmly, he could guess that the mine wasn't aimed at him. It was aimed at the two-headed shark. However, since they could detonate the mine so precisely, it meant that they had a way to accurately track the two-headed shark. We have a mission. You have a way to track the shark, right? Let's work together. You just need to help me find the shark. You don't have to do anything else. Sure. Yavenko agreed without hesitation. Avinko's subordinates didn't like Qin Zhao, but Qin Zhao ignored them. However, the shaking of the patrol boat really made Qin Zhao uncomfortable. Seasickness was Qin Zhao's weakness. Lying on the deck, Qin Zhao said, I don't feel well. Call me when you find the shark. Avinko and Danny exchanged glances. They realized that Qin Zhao was indeed not himself. This caused the two of them to have their own thoughts. Just then, a mercenary came to their side. Boss, we found the shark. It's 12 kilometers to the right, 300 meters below sea level. With that, the mercenary looked at Qin Zhao, who was lying on the deck. Boss, who's that guy? A monster, Avinko said. Are you sure it's okay for our boat to chase the two-headed shark? The mercenary asked hesitantly. You have to know that we were piloting a 30-meter-long ship last time, but it was sunk by that two-headed shark. That depends on the man's ability. Avinko wasn't very confident either. The monsters he encountered at the construction site in Abilene, Kansas were not as big as this two-headed shark. Avinko wasn't sure if Qin Zhao could handle it. Moreover, this two-headed shark was too cunning. Avinko had never dealt with such a difficult opponent. Boss, we're on top of the shark. Right now the shark is swimming below us. Yavenko nodded and walked to Qin Zhao. Just as he was about to wake Qin Zhao up, the boat suddenly tilted at a 45-degree angle. Everyone rolled over and most of them fell into the sea. Following that, two bloody mouths emerged from the water and sucked in 3 or 4 people. Avinko reacted quickly and grabbed the railing. Mr. Qin. Qin Zhao opened his eyes and saw a black shadow in the water. Qin Zhao dove into the water and grabbed the shark's fin. The two-headed shark sensed that there was someone on its back and immediately dove into the deep sea. It seemed like it wanted to kill him with the pressure of the deep sea. Unfortunately, Qin Zhao's water pressure was much stronger than it had imagined. Moreover, this was not considered a deep sea. It was at most 300 meters deep. It was far from its and Qin Zhao's limit. The two-headed shark sensed that Qin Zhao was still on its back and hadn't fallen off. It flipped over and rubbed its back against the bottom of the sea. Qin Zhao had to admit that he had never seen such a smart shark. This shark clearly wasn't an ordinary one. Qin Zhao didn't hold back this time. He punched the shark's back. The two-headed shark started struggling in pain. However, its form limited its attacks. It couldn't do anything to Qin Zhao on its back. 10 minutes later, the two-headed shark finally had no more strength to struggle. It flipped and floated to the surface. Qin Zhao also sat on the shark's abdomen. Just then the patrol boat drove over. The boat had almost flipped over, but it hadn't really capsized. After all, modern boats all had a center of gravity. Unless it was hit by an absolute force, it wouldn't flip over. Otherwise, he would be able to adjust the gravitational field and reposition it. Avinko and the people on the boat saw Qin Zhao and the two-headed shark under him. How is it possible? The two-headed shark didn't eat him? How did he do it? Did he fight with the two-headed shark in the sea? And then you killed the two-headed shark? That's unbelievable. The patrol boat drove to Qin Zhao's side. Qin Zhao jumped onto the boat, but just then the two-headed shark, which should have been killed by Qin Zhao, flipped and dove into the deep sea. I was tricked. Even Qin Zhao was dumbfounded. This was the first time he'd been tricked by someone. No, by a beast. He'd thought that although the two-headed shark had mutated, its characteristics should be the same as a regular shark. Regular sharks would suffocate if they stayed where they were for 30 seconds, but this shark had played dead for more than 10 minutes. Even Avinko and the others didn't expect the shark to be so cunning. Mr. Qin. Track it. Track that shark. I'm going to slice it into pieces. Qin Zhao roared. Thief. You broke the shark's tracking device. What? You're blaming me? Qin Zhao was furious. He grabbed Avinko's collar. I didn't mean that. I have something to do. I'm leaving. Qin Zhao felt embarrassed. He really didn't have the face to stay here anymore. With a splash he jumped into the sea. Avinko and the other mercenaries stared at Qin Zhao, dumbfounded. Boss. It's more than 100 kilometers from the coastline. That guy just jumped in like that. Avinko shook his head with a bitter smile. There was really nothing he could do about the two-headed shark. If even Qin Zhao couldn't handle it, staying here would only cause more losses for them. Avinko picked up the phone. Hello sir, it's me, Avinko. Done. No, we'll give up on this mission. We can't do it. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version. Chapter 1428. Shameful, so shameful. He'd actually been tricked by a shark. When Qin Zhao swam back to Moon Beach, he saw a school of sharks gathering together. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. Theoretically, with Little Nine and Amon, two terrifying presences, these sharks shouldn't dare to come. But this school of sharks went back. Sharks didn't have the habit of staying at home. As long as the water was right and there was enough food, they could swim anywhere. Their natural tendency to avoid danger meant that once they discovered danger, they wouldn't appear in the same area again. However, this group of sharks continued to swim in the water. This was different from the habits of sharks. So, Qin Zhao suspected that there was something here that attracted the sharks. Qin Zhao dove into the water and followed the sharks. The leader of the sharks was a great white shark more than 7 meters long. Behind it was a group of sharks of different sizes and species. Usually, sharks of different species wouldn't stay together. Even sharks of the same species wouldn't stay together. Especially medium and large sharks. They were usually alone. But these sharks didn't attack or tear each other apart. Qin Zhao followed far behind the sharks. At that moment, the sharks came to the cliff of a trench and a cave appeared in front of them. The sharks dove into the cave and Qin Zhao followed right after. Qin Zhao realized that the cave was very deep and rugged. Finally, they reached the deepest part of the cave. There was actually a shore in the deepest part of the cave. But there was a corpse on the shore. It wasn't a human corpse, but a demon's. When Qin Zhao was about to approach, he realized that a force was blocking him outside. Small world. Demon territory. This demon territory came from the demon's corpse? Demon territories and small worlds repelled each other. The sharks weren't stopped. They charged at the demon's corpse and started tearing at it. So they'd been attracted by the demon's corpse. Could it be that the two-headed shark also devoured the demon's corpse and mutated? But the two-headed shark couldn't have entered the cave with such a huge body, so it hunted its own kind. The greatest possibility was that the two-headed shark was the first shark to enter this place, and it was the first to grow and mutate. After that, because it was too big, it couldn't enter this place, so it began to attack and devour its own kind that wandered here. From there he could obtain their demonic powers. This demon's corpse had been dead for an unknown period of time, but it had not rotted at all. However, one of its arms had already been bitten into pieces. However, even the largest great white shark could only tear off a very small piece of meat when it tried to tear it apart. Qin Zhao pressed forward. The demonic domain was very strong. It was even stronger than Qin Zhao's small world. Perhaps the small world did not represent the full strength of the opponent, but the small world still determined the outcome of the battle to a large extent. This demon was already dead, so why did his demonic domain still exist? Normally, when a person died, everything would disappear, including the demonic domain. Qin Zhao's heart skipped a beat. The modified version of the dazzling spell that the handsome guy had taught him could swallow other people's demonic domains. However, it could only swallow the demonic domain and small world obtained through external objects or tricks. If it was cultivated through one's own talent, it could not be swallowed. Qin Zhao didn't know whether the demon had obtained the demonic domain through tricks or had cultivated it himself. Qin Zhao started using dazzling spells. When magic arrays appeared one by one, the sharks discovered Qin Zhao. However, their instinct was not to attack Qin Zhao. Instead, they fled. Like children who had done something wrong, they scurried around the cave crazily. The exit was blocked by Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao's aura also made them fearful. Dazzling spells started to corrode the demonic domain. However, the speed was very slow. Last time Qin Zhao had used dazzling spells to corrode Kansmosa's demonic domain, and it had only taken a few hours. However, this demonic domain was many times slower than last time. It seemed that this demon's demonic domain was his own. It was not obtained through external force or tricks. In theory, one's own demonic domain or small world should not be swallowed. However, this demonic domain was a helpless one. The reason for its existence was still unknown. The master of the demonic domain was already dead, but it was still operating. This gave Qin Zhao the chance to devour it. Qin Zhao did not know the reason, but this was a rare opportunity. Qin Zhao planned to spend some time to completely absorb the demonic domain. Gradually, as Qin Zhao absorbed the demonic domain bit by bit, his small world started to expand. It was different from the last time when he absorbed Kansmosa's demonic domain. It was completely incompatible with his own small world. This ownerless demonic domain was merging with his own small world and expanding further. Qin Zhao's demonic domain was filled with the power of water. The power of water was turning into magic power and merging into his body. This was the same feeling as when his small world absorbed the spiritual qi of the world and merged it into his body. However, this time Qin Zhao was absorbing the magic power from the water. Qin Zhao guessed that it was because the demon's demonic domain absorbed the magic power from the water that it could continue. Because it was soaked in seawater, the seawater gave the demonic domain infinite magic power. Thus, the demonic domain was maintained passively and did not dissipate with the death of its master. As Qin Zhao continuously devoured the demonic domain, it expanded. The original diameter of the small world was more than 30 meters. Now it had expanded to more than 40 meters and was still expanding. This demon's demonic domain was much larger than Qin Zhao's small world. Just then a voice sounded from Qin Zhao's earpiece. "Darling, where did you go? Do you need to prepare dinner tonight?" "I'm nearby," Qin Zhao said. "I'm dealing with the shark problem." "Do you need me to prepare dinner for you?" "No," Qin Zhao said. "I think I can only go back after midnight." Qin Zhao did not want to give up halfway. He wanted to absorb and transform the demonic domain in one go. He was also familiarizing himself with the demonic domain's characteristics. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. Vortex. A whirlpool with a diameter of 3 to 4 meters appeared around the great white shark's body, binding the great white shark. Please remember this book's domain name: 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1429. Qin Zhao's small world could allow him to fly. Although he could only fly at a height of around 100 meters. This demon territory could allow Qin Zhao to control water flow. Rather than calling it a demon territory, it was more like a deep-sea territory. As Qin Zhao devoured and transformed, the deep-sea territory and the small world kept merging. The deep-sea territory was unable to resist Qin Zhao's devouring. The devouring speed became faster and faster. It was much faster than he had expected. Qin Zhao used almost 10 hours to complete the deep-sea domain and merge it with the small world. The small world had a diameter of 100 meters. This was a big gain for Qin Zhao. Putting aside the functions of the merged deep-sea territory, just the area covered by the small world increased, so did Qin Zhao's magic power. Qin Zhao glanced at the sharks that he'd tortured. He didn't kill them. Instead, he tossed them out of the cave. Qin Zhao went to the demon's side. As the demon territory disappeared, the demon's body was rotting at an alarming rate. Qin Zhao understood that the demon territory and the demon's corpse had a mutually reinforcing relationship. The demon territory maintained the demon's corpse, while the demon's corpse maintained the demon territory. Once this balance was broken, both sides might collapse. Now that the demon territory had been taken by Qin Zhao, the demon's corpse also lost the support of magic. In the end, it couldn't escape the fate of rotting. In the end, only the skeleton was left. Qin Zhao put it away and went to the shore of the cave. A black trident stabbed into the rock. Qin Zhao pulled it out. It was so heavy. This trident probably weighed dozens of tons, right? Huh. Is this Poseidon's trident? Qin Zhao sent magic power into the trident. Instantly, the surrounding seawater started boiling. Qin Zhao felt that the black trident seemed to resonate with his magic power. This thing is not bad as my weapon. It's heavy enough and can control seawater. It looks like the legendary Poseidon's trident. But in the legends, Poseidon's trident was golden, while this trident was black. Moreover, the legendary Poseidon's weapon could split the sea. This black trident definitely didn't have that ability. This demon must have specially made this black trident for his own demon territory. Perhaps he'd studied Poseidon's trident. Qinzhao came out of the cave. The sharks of different sizes were still outside the cave and hadn't left yet. However, Qinzhao didn't feel any hostility from them. A few sharks circled around him. Go away or I'll kill you. Qinzhao suddenly realized that he wouldn't get water even if he spoke in the water. The sharks were so scared that they ran more than 10 meters away, but after a few seconds they turned back. They didn't dare to approach Qinzhao, but they didn't want to leave either. They only dared to watch from afar. Was it because of his deep-sea domain? Qinzhao took out a demon bone and tossed it to the biggest great white shark. The great white shark immediately opened its mouth and began to chomp. The other sharks also opened their mouths and surrounded Qinzhao. Qinzhao tossed a few bones to them. Come here, Qinzhao ordered. A few sharks swam to his side. In fact, the intelligence of sharks was not low. In the sea, the intelligence of sharks was second only to that of killer whales. But most of the time they were driven by their appetite. Qinzhao took out a few bottles of wisdom potion and tossed them to the 5 sharks. They bit through the bottle and swallowed the potion. Without my order, don't hurt any humans, Qinzhao ordered. If you understand, nod. The 5 sharks actually nodded at Qinzhao, although nodding was a very difficult action for them. After all, sharks didn't have necks, but they still moved their heads up and down. There were 5 sharks before him. One was a 7-meter great white shark and one was more than 5 meters long. The other 3 belonged to a small group. They were 3 rat sharks. The big one was more than 3 meters long, while the small 2 weren't even 2 meters. Go chase the other sharks away. Qinzhao had a plan. He would have them act as guards here and patrol the nearby waters. After all, it wasn't easy for Amon to come to some shallow waters. Amon was more than 100 meters long and 15 meters tall now, so he couldn't move around in some shallow waters. With these 5 shark guards, they could be the patrol team here. Plus, the demon's corpse had disappeared, so it wouldn't attract sharks anymore. Qinzhao didn't plan on getting more shark guards either. After all, if there were too many sharks, it would destroy the ecology of this area. Qinzhao still liked the natural environment. At the same time, he could ensure the safety of his family. Just then the 5 sharks suddenly grew nervous. A black shadow loomed over them. The 3 rat sharks were the most cowardly. They turned and fled immediately. The great white shark and the bull shark stared at the black shadow nervously. Without Qinzhao's order, they didn't flee. On the other hand, Qinzhao controlled the water flow and pulled the 3 rat sharks back. Come back. They're not enemies. Qinzhao saw that Little 9 had returned. Little 9, do you see them? From now on, the 5 of them will be your underlings. Protect them. Little 9 saw the 5 sharks. His 9 heads glowed fiercely. If Qinzhao wasn't beside them, he probably would have attacked already. The 5 sharks were all very nervous. Thankfully, Little 9 was much smarter than them. After receiving Qinzhao's order, he only threatened the 5 sharks a little. From now on, you're the 5 tiger generals. Qinzhao playfully gave them a name. You're Guan Yu. Qinzhao pointed at the great white shark and then at the bull shark. You're Zhang Fei, you're Ma Chao, you're Huang Zhong, you're Zhao Yun. Qinzhao named them the 5 tiger generals according to their size from oldest to youngest. Qinzhao couldn't recognize them just based on appearance, especially the 3 identical rat sharks. They all had shifty eyes, so he could only distinguish them based on size. Follow Little 9 and patrol our territory. If you encounter other sharks, either bite and eat them or chase them away. With Little 9 leading the way, they didn't have to be afraid even if they encountered the mutated 2-headed shark. Little 9 was enough to deal with the 2-headed shark. Now that the demon's corpse had disappeared, the 2-headed shark might not come to this area again. The 5 tiger generals were all like wolves and tigers. They completely treated themselves as Qinzhao's loyal dogs and followed his orders obediently. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared before Qinzhao's eyes. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version. Chapter 1430. Qinzhao rubbed Feilai and lay in the movie theater on the 2nd floor, watching the finished movie that Steven had sent over. Although Steven's new movie had not been released yet, The post-production special effects and editing had already been completed. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows was the vast starry sky, and below was the vast undulating sea. However, the soundproofing effect of the floor-to-ceiling windows was very good, and the sound of the tides outside could not be heard at all. "Darling, when are we going to look for Treasure Island?" Feilai wanted to fulfill this wish before she went to work. She wanted to go on an adventure at sea. Qin Zhao scratched his forehead. "After Jerlin's birthday. Before that, let's buy a yacht together." After watching the movie, he deleted it from the hard drive. The movie hadn't been released yet. Even if it was at home, it wouldn't leak out. Qin Zhao didn't want to take the risk either. It was better to be safe than sorry. The next day, Qin Zhao received a call from Ofer Lurby. "Mr. Qin, do you have time to come to the North Beach Pier? Our company has mobilized a few yachts from other cities. Please take a look and see if you are satisfied with any of them." The North Beach Pier had another name, the Yacht Pier. Generally, for large yacht transactions, the yacht company would mobilize yachts from other cities to the customer's city according to the customer's needs, and provide the customer with a tour and choice. If the customer was not satisfied, the yacht company would change another batch. Of course, if it was just a small or medium-sized yacht that cost $1 or $2 million USD, the yacht company would only show the customer the model and photos. Only after the customer had chosen the yacht would the real thing be delivered to the city. "Sure, I'll go over now." After hanging up, he asked, "Feilai, do you want to go see the yacht?" "Sure." Feilai was quite free at home, so she decided to go look at the yacht and help Qin Zhao choose. Of course, the two of them had to bring little Jerlin and little Larissa along when they went out. When they arrived at the pier, it was filled with yachts of various sizes. Many private yachts were docked here. There were also many yacht companies that had rented some berths. And there will be 1 or 2 yacht fairs here every week. Every year there would be 3 or 4 international yacht exhibitions. Even when walking around, a few salesmen would come over and ask if they wanted a yacht. There were brand new yachts and second-hand yachts. The United States had a lot of yachts. It could be said that half of the yachts in the world were in the United States. As the largest yacht market, the Americans' affection for yachts was similar to that for cars. Moreover, a consumer yacht was the same as a car. Once you got bored of it, you could sell it and buy another one. As a result, the yacht market was booming. Just this yacht dock alone had a flow of over 100 million every month. Apart from the super yachts, there were all kinds of yachts here. Qin Zhao and Feilai each carried a child. They indeed looked like a family that had come to buy a yacht. Ofer Lurby saw Qin Zhao from afar and immediately ran over. He didn't want Qin Zhao to be targeted by other companies. Although he didn't see any representatives from other companies of the same level, there were many salespeople and representatives from large companies wandering around the pier. These people had a list of more than 70% of the rich people in the United States in their hands. As long as they saw someone familiar, whether there was a chance or not, they would go over to strike up a conversation. At the very least, they would give them a business card. Qin Zhao was a very important client of Seagate. In fact, he could be said to be the most important client for the next 3 years. "Mr. Qin." Ofer Lurby quickly ran to Qin Zhao. "Is this beautiful lady your wife?" "Yes." Qin Zhao nodded. "These 2 little princesses are your daughters, right?" Ofer Lurby asked. "Yes." "This way, please. I also have 2 daughters." Ofer Lurby knew how to get close to clients. As they walked, he chatted with Qin Zhao. "But my eldest daughter is already in college. Do you know how I felt when I heard that she found a boyfriend in college?" "I've thought about it too," Qin Zhao said. "I think I'll kill that guy." The conversation between the 2 fathers was endless. Ofer Lurby also played to Qin Zhao's liking and kept talking about daughters. "Mr. Qin, Miss Feilai, there's a row here. 6 yachts are produced by our company. Each one is unique." Ofer Lurby pointed at a row. The 6 yachts were all large and about the same size. "How about we board this yacht first?" "Sure." Qin Zhao and Feilai carried the child onto the yacht. Little Jerlin immediately wanted to get out of Qin Zhao's arms. Qin Zhao put Jerlin down and she started running around on the yacht. Ofer Lurby followed Qin Zhao and Feilai, introducing the yacht's various data and prices. After a few minutes, Jerlin ran back to Qin Zhao, panting. "Daddy hug." Qin Zhao picked up little Jerlin. "Tired?" "Yes." "Do you like this boat?" Qin Zhao asked. "No," Jerlin said, shaking her head. "It's not as big as our original boat." Ofer Lurby's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that this family didn't like boats. However, the yacht under their feet wasn't small anymore. It was 165 feet long, with a maximum range of 3,000 nautical miles and a maximum cruising speed of 25 knots per hour. Qin Zhao looked at O'Furlerby. I don't like this yacht either. I like a yacht that can be operated by a few people. It's best if it's highly automated. Of course. Smiling, O'Furlerby said, it's my oversight. The 5 yachts behind can all be operated by one person. They're 80% automated. Bring us to the last yacht, Qin Zhao said. I like the big one. Because the last yacht was the largest of the 6, Qin Zhao was more inclined to it. Of course. O'Furlerby nodded. But the price of the yacht? It's fine, Qin Zhao said. If I like it, I'll buy it. O'Furlerby was a bit excited. The last yacht was already a super yacht. Seagate only had one ready-made super yacht right now. It could be considered the company's face. Mr. Qin, this yacht is called Hydra. But why is it called that? Is it ordered by some evil organization? Haha. Of course not. O'Furlerby laughed. It's because this yacht uses a 9-cylinder engine. The 9-cylinder engine has the largest and highest power among all the engines of the same specifications. Chapter 1431. O'Furlerby's words were very fancy, but Qin Zhao didn't understand. Not at all. Qin Zhao didn't know much about these things, so he didn't understand these professional terms. Will my custom-made yacht be a 9-cylinder model? No. O'Furlerby shook his head. Mr. Qin, we plan to use a 24-cylinder super engine for your yacht, but we'll have to ask the German IFX company to customize it. It'll cost an estimated $80 million to develop. Qin Zhao was speechless. An engine was worth $80 million. One could imagine how much the entire yacht would cost. An engine costs that much too? We only have the technology right now, and it's in the hands of the German IFX company. We don't have a finished product yet, so we have to turn the technology into a product. At the same time, we have to design and modify it according to our specifications. It's a very big project, so the 24-cylinder engine isn't expensive. To put it bluntly, this engine technology wasn't suitable for most machines. Mass production was impossible. If the IFX company wanted to recover their cost, they could only raise the price and use custom-made services. But the design isn't out yet. Mr. Qin, let's talk about the yacht first. Okay, please continue. This yacht is called Hydra. It's 298 feet long and has a maximum height of 124 feet. It has a top speed of 45 knots per hour and a maximum range of 6,000 nautical miles. It has 21 bedrooms, 2 dining rooms, 1 entertainment room, 1 cinema, 1 30 by 30 swimming pool and 2 helipads. Oh right, if Mr. Qin wants to buy this yacht, we'll give you an FB-99 helicopter. How much is the yacht? $88 million. Qin Zhao looked at Fei Lai. He quite liked the yacht too. Can we go to the restaurant for a bit? Fei Lai asked. On one hand, she felt that the yacht was really nice, but it wasn't cheap. At least, it was much higher than Qin Zhao's budget. However, this yacht was much bigger than their first yacht, Fei Lai. It was also called Hydra. Fei Lai felt that this yacht was fated with their family. Of course. O'Furlerby obviously didn't think that such a big deal could be settled with just a few words. Even if Qin Zhao didn't buy it in the end, he couldn't complain. The yacht was like a castle on the sea. It was between a large yacht and a super yacht. In Qin Zhao's eyes, this yacht was already very luxurious. If it was a super yacht, who knew how luxurious it would be? What's that opening for? That's where the speedboat is stored. As long as the yacht is docked there, the automatic machinery inside will pull the yacht in. O'Furlerby continued. This yacht has fully automated navigation and navigation capabilities, and it can automatically check for malfunctions. In theory, one person can completely steer this yacht. In addition, the yacht is also equipped with a freshwater processor. Otherwise, if Qin Zhao found some small problems after the delivery, it might affect their future cooperation. Therefore, the checkup was necessary. After Qin Zhao left, O'Furlerby gathered his engineers and maintenance team to do a thorough inspection of the entire yacht. Even a loose screw had to be replaced. O'Furlerby did not want any problems to happen here. Chapter 1432. The Hydra slowly docked at the moon pier at the bottom of the cliff. The water here was deep enough, so it was suitable for a pier. Looking at the villa on the cliff, Ofer Lurby exclaimed inwardly. As expected of a rich person. The long, narrow and high-quality private beach was already very expensive. It was also a very complicated project to build the villa in such a location. It wasn't that Ofer Lurby hadn't met rich people before. In fact, he couldn't even count the number of rich people he'd met. However, the owner of this villa had a rare personality. Actually, not every rich person knew how to enjoy life. For many rich people, their greatest joy wasn't to enjoy life but to earn money. Earning money was their greatest joy. However, the villa before him was filled with a wild imagination. It had a high-tech appearance and a special location. It didn't seem to be a building of this time and space. This was life. When Ofer was rich, he would definitely buy a piece of land like this and build a house like this. In fact, Ofer Lurby was rich. As an executive of Seagate, he earned at least $3 million a year. This was already an income that most people in this world couldn't reach. However, people always competed and had their own desires. Ofer Lurby got off the boat and walked past the pier. When he arrived at the elevator, the doors opened. When Ofer Lurby and the Hydra arrived, the butler had already reminded Qin Zhao. This was the function of the butler system. Every visitor would be notified to the owner. "Hello, Mr. Qin." Ofer Lurby looked around and realized that Fei Lai and their children weren't at home. Only Qin Zhao was sunbathing on a chair in the yard. A huge brown bear lay beside him. Ofer Lurby was shocked, but he quickly calmed down. Wasn't it normal for rich people to like to raise strange animals? He'd even seen people raise lions and tigers. "Isn't Miss Fei Lai home?" "Fei Lai and the kids are playing on the beach." Ofer Lurby turned his head and saw a figure on the beach. How did it feel to have such a large beach occupied by one person? Qin Zhao stood up. "Please sit." "Want some wine?" Qin Zhao asked. "Thank you," Ofer Lurby replied politely. Suddenly, he saw that the bottle beside him didn't have a label. "Nameless wine? Is this the drink of this super-rich man?" Oliver Lobbill took a sip of the red wine. It was indeed a nameless wine. He had tasted the nameless wine before. The wine's aroma and taste were exactly the same as the one he had tasted before. Of course, Orford Labier knew about the nameless wine. His company also used the nameless wine to entertain VIPs. The last time Qin Zhao went to their company, they had treated him with nameless wine. However, the nameless wine was too expensive, and the key point was that it was difficult to obtain. Therefore, even a powerful company might not be able to use the nameless wine to entertain important guests every time. "Mr. Qin, do you need to familiarize yourself with the operation of the yacht?" Orf Lurby asked. "All right." Qin Zhao nodded. "I need to feed my pet too. Princess, bring the beef out." To Ofer Labier's surprise, Princess returned, dragging the wrapped beef into the elevator. "Mr. Qin, what kind of pet are you going to feed? You actually want to use beef?" "Turk." "Hee. Mr. Qin really likes to joke." With the help of the princess, 2 tons of beef were delivered to the yacht. Qin Zhao and Orf Lurby also boarded the yacht. Orf Lurby started to explain the operation of the yacht to Qin Zhao. Yachts nowadays weren't as technologically advanced as 10 years ago. They needed a dozen sailors. Yachts nowadays were all about simplifying the most complicated operations. In other words, it was like an idiot's operation. Of course, the yacht itself also had manual control. But that wasn't part of the teaching. After trying it once, Qin Zhao had already learned most of it. Then Qin Zhao stopped the boat. "Here." Qin Zhao turned and walked out of the cockpit. "Mr. Orf, help me lower the lift at the stern." "Okay, Mr. Qin." Usually, the stern of a large yacht was very low and had a lift function. Qin Zhao and Princess dragged the 2 tons of beef and opened the foil packaging. Orf Lurby also came over wanting to see if he could help. Qin Zhao clapped his hands. Just then a few fins appeared in the water. "Shark, Mr. Qin, it's a shark. Leave the stern." Orf Lurby yelled in shock. He also ran away from the stern. "It's fine. They're my pets," Qin Zhao said casually. Guan Laoda, one of the 5 great generals, was the first to leap onto the back of the boat and land on the deck. Orf Lurby almost peed his pants. "A great white shark. That's a great white shark." Qin Zhao grabbed a large piece of beef and tossed it to Guan Laoda. "Go down. Don't be greedy. Zhang Fei, it's your turn." Guan Yu turned around and went into the water. Then Zhang Fei's tiger shark flopped onto the deck. Orf Lurby didn't find this interesting. He only felt scared. He was afraid that the sharks would bite Qin Zhao and drag him into the water. However, to his surprise, the sharks seemed to be very obedient as they moved up and down. They didn't have any intention to attack either. Qin Zhao and Princess fed the sharks and they would go into the water after getting their share. Just when Orf Lurby thought that Qin Zhao had finished feeding, the great white shark suddenly jumped up again. But this time, there was a bluefin tuna in the shark's mouth that had already been bitten to death. The shark loosened its mouth and tossed the bluefin tuna onto the deck. Then it turned and slid into the water. Orf Lurby sucked in a breath of cold air. Wasn't this shark too smart? It knew how to please its master. Also, such a big bluefin tuna must be worth at least a few $100,000, right? Bluefin tuna was one of the most expensive ingredients in the world. Due to its huge economic value and human overfishing, it had become rarer and rarer in recent years. The bigger the bluefin tuna, the more valuable it was. With Orf Lurby's eyesight, this bluefin tuna was at least 650 kilograms. This was basically the maximum size of a bluefin tuna. There might not even be one bluefin tuna of this size caught in a year in the entire world. Mr. Orf, stay and eat raw fish with us later. Of course, it's my honor, Orf Lurby exclaimed. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.